OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We'd love to hear from you, whatever your opinions are, no matter how wild. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number you can get in touch with us on. You can always leave a comment on whatever stream you're watching. That might be YouTube, that could be on Twitter, on Periscope, or on Facebook. We check them all and we see them all. We see you, don't worry, we see you, we know who you are. And we'd love to hear from you if you've got anything that you'd like to talk to us about that is in any way coherent or relevant to sport or life, then we're happy. Just some of you are, I think beyond saving, it turns out. Some of you are actually just beyond saving. We'll come back to that some other time. It's 31 minutes past 7 here this morning on, what are we at, the 18th of August. Did you know we are just 25 days away from the start of the new Premier League season? Who'd have thunk? Because it feels like it just finished. What better time for us to start our depth chart? So we're going to start today with the Liverpool depth chart, where we go through position by position. You might think the Liverpool depth chart is fairly nailed on. Everybody knows exactly who's playing in their starting 11. That's true. It's the second tier and that squad depth that they have that we're going to get into a good bit with Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Wrap. That's coming your way just after 8 o'clock this morning. Nathan's going to join us for Deal or No Deal, and we'll round up some of the other big football stories that are happening. We'll talk about the CPA's proposal to split the season and the momentum that that's gathering from other sources as well. So a really busy programme for you. Also talking with Kieran Donaghy and Jimmy Diggins about the importance of volunteers as the annual Volunteer Awards issue their call for submission. So that's all coming up a little bit later on. But obviously we're talking Champions League tonight. Philippe Auclair joined Joe to look at the success of Paris Saint-Germain so far and the rest of the semi-final action. Have a look.
This Farmers League of yours ain't so bad.
Yes. Well, there's farm and farm. This is obviously kind of quite a posh one with very fine produce. It's true you haven't seen too much of it in the past few years, apart from the same one. But actually, I'm being tough when I say that. Remember Monaco, they weren't so bad. Remember Lille, they weren't so bad either. So, no, it's a rather wondrous surprise, given the state French football was in just a few months ago. Remember when the decision was taken to abandon the league, and people said in France, to start with, this is the proof we're going nowhere, this is the proof we're rubbish, and so forth. And now actually some people, are thinking back and are wondering, I wonder if that forced rest hasn't actually been a good thing for French clubs, judging at how physically they were superior to their adversaries in this particular competition. But that's a different subject.
Let's go back to last week then for a moment, and PSG Atalanta. PSG trailing for 64 minutes in this game. I was looking at Thomas Tuchel and his boot, and I was thinking nonsense. Steve McLaren and his brolly in the rain has a prop been so perfect for the mood, and there were ashen-faced players around the stands, and it looked for all the world like we would be talking about PSG once again succumbing to a mixture of pressure and whatever other attribute you want to suggest they're lacking. And they came through in the most dramatic fashion. Yes, and when you say that, you make me think almost like one of these characters in a Martin Scorsese movie who's been put, he's been made to put on concrete boots, so to speak, and finishes in the bay. And a kind of weird version of Marcelo Bielsa as well, sitting on this box. It looked very bad, and especially when you know that Thomas Tuchel is by no means somebody who is not criticized at PSG, and you thought, well, here we go again. But this time they found the answer. I'm not absolutely sure it was the toughest test that they could possibly have had, and we shouldn't forget that Atalanta were absolutely magnificent until basically physically they gave way. They were not able to harry the Parisian players as much as they had done for about an hour. And then you saw as well the incredible impact that even on 1.5 leg, Kylian Mbappe can have on the game.
And he came back just at the right time. Without him, I don't know if it would have happened. But I mean, the parallel is quite extraordinary, isn't it, when you think about Manchester City and PSG, because both teams are always compared for many reasons, obviously for the financing, for the disappointments in the Champions League. And on one hand, you've got Raheem Sterling missing an open goal, and on the other, you've got Neymar missing open goals as well, but Neymar going through. And you think, well, is there something that PSG have done that Manchester City haven't done, which is basically to have luck on their side? And it might be their year. This is now, I think, then the main problems, if that's not a problem actually, but it's now that the competition starts. I mean, it was extraordinary to hear many of my French colleagues talk about that game against Atalanta as being, in fact, the start of the season for PSG. You know, they've done the treble in France and nobody's talked about it. It's become so ordinary, so expected that it means not much really. So it is the big one for them, just as it was the big one for Manchester City. But they're through.
Am I right in saying that there was never a domestic treble in France until 6 years ago, and since then PSG have done it 4 times?
Yeah, you're correct.
I
know.
So I can see why there is a hollowness to that.
There is a hollowness, and when they don't do it, as was the case the season before that, people looked at Rennes and at Strasbourg winning the French Cup and the League Cup, thinking, oh, it's just a pure chance, whatever. It will never happen again. It was a massive surprise. Whereas, it was not quite the same thing, I would say, for Manchester City's treble. I mean, people were expecting perhaps a little bit more resistance from the opposition. But it's come to that point, yes, where honestly there is so little competition throughout the season for the title that it's par for the course. Even with Lyon reaching the semi-finals and beating the clubs they have beaten, this won't change what we're going to see from next week onwards in the French league. I reassure you, by the way, Lyon and PSG have got their first games postponed, so they won't have to play in the French league over the next weekend either.
What about Neymar's performance? So often the pantomime villain for various reasons and excesses, but chances he seemed to continually miss aside, I think the general consensus rightly is that he was very good in this game.
He was magnificent. He was absolutely superb. He was, I think, on another plane from any of his teammates, perhaps until Kylian Mbappe came on and had such a massive impact. But I don't think that would be a big surprise to people who've followed him over the years at PSG, where he's had loads of criticism, particularly for his off-the-field antics, and for the fact that very often he hasn't been available at the most important moments in his club seasons. But when he's been around, he's actually performed extremely well. And you could say, for example, this season, where honestly things haven't been always very good in terms of the game that PSG has played with Turin, very often the one spark was Neymar. And Angel Di Maria was for a while, who, by the way, is back from suspension, which is a big plus for Thomas Tuchel. But very often, Neymar was the one shining light with Kylian Mbappe in that Parisian team, and was actually quite consistent. Unfortunately, he missed so many games, in so many important games, that the perception is skewed, I'm afraid, of what he's brought to the table.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I was even just checking the stats. In 83 appearances, he's scored 70 goals and created 40 more. Now, it doesn't matter if you're playing in a league where you're clearly dominant. You have to be doing a lot of things right to come up with that kind of produce. So I've definitely fallen into the bracket of those who have a skewed vision of Neymar, to be honest. I mean, at 28, I just viewed him almost as close to a flop. Yeah,
but I think that you could say that in a way he is. And I just contradicted myself here, but the choice he made to leave Barcelona, when you see what's happened to Barcelona and how important he could have been for that club, and joining PSG, where basically he was joining a team where he was guaranteed to win 2-3 titles a season, maybe was not the best way to challenge his huge talent. So there is still some frustration about him, because he still hasn't achieved with his national team what he thought and dreamed he could achieve, And what is achieved with PSG has been achieved by others, and probably would have been achieved without him. And, even though he's been a shining light and he's been magnificent in so many occasions and so forth, and he could be the man who makes all the difference this time round, when honestly it's a chance that PSG might not get twice or thrice. I mean, you look at what's happened to them, and the draw and the way things have been going for them, the physical freshness in which they're at, the fact that, okay, they've got two players missing. Big miss is Verratti, obviously, we're still injured. The other, Keylor Navas, I think Rico is a very decent second keeper, so I don't think they will feel that too much. But they're almost at full strength. They look physically excellent. And they are there so close to what they've always been dreamt of, since the Qataris took over in 2011.
No, it's certainly a big chance now suddenly. And on Neymar, so accept then that he's producing maybe more consistently on the pitch than I might have suspected. I think in part, Philippe, that's because the perception, that I have and that many have, is that because so often when he pops into our consciousness, it's because he's missing for a big Champions League game, or it's his birthday and he's gone partying for about 6 days straight and missed.
Or it's the carnival in Rio and
all that stuff, and you think, my God, this guy's a troublemaker. Has he, to any extent, do we know or do we suspect, at 28 years of age, grown up and become more of a leader, more of a team player, or is it much the same off the field?
Listen, I've been told by a number of people who follow PSG much more closely than I do, who are there, all the time, go to the park, also spend the time at the Camp des Loges, speak to a lot of people, all of whom have said that they think that it was a more mature Neymar they had seen at work this season in particular. And also he has taken very well to being a leader, which is a bit surprising, not just a technical leader, when, some of the big names have been missing. When Kylian Mbappe was injured, Angel Di Maria was not available. And also his role apparently has been very important during the lockdown period and during the hiatus of the French season, when they got back together to train. Apparently his influence was really positive. He was really up for it and really took on that responsibility of being the main guy. He took it very well. That's what I'm being told. I'm a little bit cautious about that, because it's not the first time I've heard such a thing, and that, sometimes 2 weeks, maybe 2 hours afterwards, you've heard about another little, kerfuffle or another excursion to Rio or something like that. But it certainly hasn't had any impact on his game. And no, he appears to have had a more consistent behaviour off the pitch as well as on it this season.
You mentioned Thomas Tuchel then. There is a workman-like quality to aspects of PSG now. Idrissa Gueye and Andres Herrera in midfield. That is not Galactico central. We're talking about players who are doing the right things and doing steady things on the pitch and not vacating areas and all the boring stuff. You suspect that maybe we would think PSG are not overly interested in. So in that respect, Thomas Tuchel deserves, I would think, a fair degree of credit here. Is this the vision he's been working towards? Has it been difficult for him to convince the powers that be that, there has to be a pragmatism to PSG's play? You might give us your sense of what Tuchel has done.
I think that whatever he's going to do, he's going to have his fair share of criticism. The problem he's had is the obligation of fielding the so-called Fantastic Four, which is basically Neymar, Mbappe, Di Maria, and Icardi. And he might very well do it against RB Leipzig, which might come as a surprise to you, because you would think, well, he's actually found a formula that works. But apparently he's not going to keep it. It's always a little bit tricky, because he's not a manager who is not without his criticism within the club itself. His relationship with Leonardo is not the best. There are even been people who said that Leonardo has, in a way, been soaping the plank, as we say in French, for Tuchel on several occasions, that they don't necessarily see eye to eye. And he has yet to decide on a particular tactical setup that he will, create a a game identity, so to speak, that you will recognize as being undoubtedly PSG. And there was at one point, yes, there was Herrera, Marquinhos, Paredes, or Idrissa Gueye. And you would have these three in midfield, and then which would give Paris, a much more solid basis from which to use their fantasistas.
Yeah.
But there's always the temptation to go back to this four, and he's probably going to play this four. I mean, which on the paper looks fantastic, but then it's up to Marquinhos and Paredes probably to do the dirty job and allow them to flourish. Again, whether we should criticize Tuchel or laud him for that, also if and when they qualify or get dumped. Believe me, if they fail against RB Leipzig, he's going to get an awful lot of stick, regardless of everything that's happened beforehand.
Okay, so Marquinhos and Paredes will be giving the team the foundation, whereas the other evening, if people didn't catch the game overly, Mbappe was injured, Di Maria was suspended, which was the reason we had Idrissa Gueye and Andres Herrera coming in there. It sounds like you suspect that may be a mistake. This more cavalier approach tomorrow may be a mistake.
I mean, the form of Neymar is so terrific, and Di Maria as well coming back is a huge plus. And Mbappe is not going to be, I think, at 100%, but even at 95% is going to be something. The question mark for me is Icardi, whom I found very unconvincing, to say the least, since the football has come back. And he's had his moments at PSG. There have been times where he's been extremely efficient. That hasn't been the case since then. And I'm a little bit dubious about this, even though Marquinhos on a good day is one of the best, honestly, in this position. He can do an awful lot of work, but yes, I do have my doubts. I think it's a bit too cavalier, but I'm willing to be proven absolutely wrong. It's just a feeling I have that seeing Icardi not really firing as he should, doing some good work up front, but playing his back to goal, which honestly he's not good at, or not the best at. And I'm also wondering if it is the best way to use Neymar as well, because an awful lot of the defensive duties won't be Icardi and Neymar. It will be certainly up to Di Maria and Mbappe to cover the fullbacks, which are, quite adventurous fullbacks. When you think of Bernat and Kehrer, they do like to go up the field as well. So I'm just wondering if the balance is correct against a team like RB Leipzig. We shall see. We don't know.
We shall see. We shall see. Mbappe, you mentioned, his impact was extraordinary the other evening. About Neymar's motivations and his move to Paris, Mbappe has the world at his feet. I suspect he quite enjoys living in Paris and playing for PSG, and life is good. But do we know, does he have ambitions to play outside of Ligue 1? Do we know where his future lays?
There were noises at one point, I would say about a year ago, when you did get the feeling, and actually we had some information that people in his entourage were sounding various other people, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
he was not too enamored with what was going on. He didn't really, wasn't obviously really sure of where the club was going. There had been internal problems. He also had some disciplinary problems, which were very unlike him. Remember when he had these red cards and he looked really nervous on the pitch. This has changed. And I think an awful lot depends, again, on this one game, which is crazy. You would think that the project that has been built and paid for and financed in Paris would not revolve perhaps about the result of one final, basically, at this stage. But unfortunately, it is. The rumours have calmed down, though, about him. First of all, he would cost you a few pennies. And I don't think there are many clubs at the moment who are in a financial situation where they could look at spending how much? 150 million, 170 million, 200 million? I mean, Neymar was 220 million. Kylian Mbappe is just at the very start of what looks to be a prodigious career. So I don't think at the moment any club could possibly, apart from Barcelona, because if everything I hear about Barcelona, which you've probably heard in the last 36 hours, I don't know. Maybe they will sell everybody and buy everybody. So, but
Yes.
that's about the only situation in which I could imagine Mbappe leaving Paris at the moment. It's much too precious for them, and he's in a good place at the moment.
Okay. When you talk about the consequences for the project of this season's Champions League, does that extend to Tuchel as well? I mean, is his job just in the balance?
Yeah.
Is that just the case for every PSG manager now? Yeah.
Yes, it is the case for every PSG manager. He's not at all in the kind of position of strength that, for example, Pep Guardiola is, because the Manchester City project was built, certainly in its third phase, was built around Pep Guardiola. So it completely relies on Pep Guardiola and the people who are around him, with him, to function. Tuchel is an employee of the club. He's not somebody. He's not a manager in the sense that Pep Guardiola is a manager. There's the presence of Leonardo, of course, is something which is very important. The importance that the club's owners place on the results is also all important. And they've showed in the past, that they can get rid of managers just like that. And should he fail, this week, yes, his future would definitely be in doubt.
Okay, well, that game's tomorrow. Leon, their prize for beating Manchester City is Bayern Munich, which will be no easy task, to say the least. Just on Pep, seeing as you mentioned him, Philippe, where is his stock for you now? We don't need to go into the ins and outs of his tactical mistakes. I think they've been well discussed and much discussed at this stage, but they were fairly dramatic mistakes in such an important game. Where is Pep's stock for you now?
As high as it was. Because the mistakes that are referred to are in fact not mistakes as such, but they're components of his personality, of his game philosophy. He's made these mistakes before. I mean, before the game, I was actually quite confident in the chances of Lyon, because I thought that he would make the same mistake he made against Tottenham in the quarterfinal last year. And I think he did something quite, remember when he put Kevin De Bruyne on the bench?
Yeah.
And he did something similar. In a different way, but he did something similar. So it's part of the Pep Guardiola approach. And I think to consider him as he's not as good, he's a fraud and so forth, on the basis of one game in which everything depended on the ball bobbling in front of the goal is utterly ludicrous. He's not quite the all-seeing genius that people have made him into, but he's certainly not a useless manager. He's a truly great manager, and probably the greatest manager of his generation. It's just football happens.
Yes, certainly. I mean, nobody, I think, credible thinks he's anything but a brilliant manager. But as you put it very well there, all-seeing genius he is not. I mean, this is a trend now. This has happened in too many games where, and again, it's tough to go inside his head and know exactly what's going on, but he seems to be attributing such importance to these Champions League games that you suspect he's overthinking them in some way.
And very much so, yeah.
If he was up against 7th, and maybe 7th in Ligue 1 was a false position for Lyon, but if Manchester City were playing 7th in the Premier League, they would simply go out and impose themselves in the game and win it and think nothing of it. So you just wonder, is it a loss of nerve? Is there some level of self-doubt there? I'd be fascinated to get his honest account of why, when it comes to these moments, he is wobbling and weirdly going away from his resolute principles. It was an extraordinary decision.
Was it the memory of what happened in the group phase last season, where Lyon were a really tough opponent? Was it a little bit too much respect for Lyon's European pedigree, which is genuine? Was it, and which is what I'm more tempted to believe, that is the fact that I think Lyon should be given a huge amount of credit for the way they set up and the unbelievable, I'm going to use this old expression, unbelievable belief, which they showed throughout the game. And also physically, they were in super shape, which they really showed until the very last second. But remember, 2011, 2012, when Chelsea, 10-men Chelsea eliminated Barcelona, and that was the Barcelona of Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi and everybody, and a Chelsea side that was perhaps in paper one of the weakest of the Abramovich era. They still won over 2 legs. And you had the feeling when you watched that game, and I remember talking at length with a few friends like Jonathan Wilson and others, you really get the feeling that it was almost like a game philosophy which had been taken to the almost an absurd degree of sophistication. And there's one point when it becomes quite sterile. And I think it's time for him, and this is, he describes himself as a Cruyffian, as a disciple of Johan Cruyff. Now, one thing I would never associate with Johan Cruyff and his sides, his Barcelona sides, would be sterility. They were sometimes fragile. They could suddenly crack, as they did against Milan, as we all remember. But what they had was an incredible freedom of expression. And I think it's perhaps that way that he's going to consider things, perhaps to give his players back some freedom of expression, which, for me, they had lost in that game. And which is what happens when you think too much about things and you're not quite on song and your tactical organization is not quite what it should be. And also you get a few bad calls, or bad calls, actually not bad calls. You get a few calls against you, and which is just part of the game. And then you cannot really react against that because you've lost that capacity to express yourself beyond a tactical organization. You've lost the sense of madness. And this sense of madness and chaos, which is something, for example, which you would equate with Klopp's Liverpool, is not something that you equate with Guardiola's Manchester City. He's going to have to integrate it in his extraordinary capacity to make people play as they can play under him, in terms of the way they find each other, with closed eyes, the way that they place themselves on the ground, on the field of play. It's going to be fascinating to see how he reacts and bounces back from that.
Before you go, we're going to be checking in with Barcelona in a few moments' time. So this is the low, as PK said, all-time low, certainly in the last this century, and they can't ignore the problems for another season. 900 million spent in the last 5 years on Sid Lowe had 29 players, and he doesn't think one of them could be called an out-and-out success, which is an extraordinary achievement, even if you were trying to do that. So 900 million spent. Messi at 33, some aging key cogs around him, and just a sense of devastation about the whole club. Do you suspect they can bounce back more quickly from this than we're talking about at the moment? Because the consensus is that it's a root and branch rebuild. Bartomeu must go. La Masia needs to be looked at again. You can see how they might need to do that. But equally, a club of Barcelona's stature, money problems and issues aside, which can generally be sorted out one way or another, you can see them coming back relatively quickly still, I would think. Or are you into that end of era, this could be a 4 or 5 year rebuild job territory?
The latter, yes. Yeah.
Latter.
The latter. Because I have to say that I've spoken to quite a few Barca shareholders, sources. They're all very worried about the situation of Lionel Messi. They're all wondering if he could walk away. They wouldn't blame him for it. Bartomeu is detested in a way that I cannot think any other president has ever been detested, in terms certainly of the number of people who want him out. It's not that they bought bad players, by the way. Antoine Griezmann is a magnificent player. De Jong is a magnificent player. So you think that they've still got people there who are, excellent. So you don't expect them to, be in danger of relegation from La Liga. But to get back to the kind of level that they have been at, to be absolutely honest, I wonder if it will ever be the same, because they're not going to have one of the best players, if not the best player in history, with them for much longer. There needs to be a complete rebuild of the club, and rebuilding La Masia, that's impossible to think in those terms, because to rebuild the whole system doesn't take a season. It takes 5, 10 years, 15 years. That's how long it takes. And also, I have to say I'm very dubious about the identity of the new manager. If what I hear is correct, I genuinely don't think he's right. I'm talking about Ronald Koeman here. I'm actually a bit astounded that he would be considered for that job at that particular moment in time. But there you go. What do I know about it? He's proved a lot of people wrong with the national team, but he hasn't proved wrong about their capacities to be a great club manager and to arrive in this mess. Despite his the legacy he's left at Barca as a player, despite the prestige and the fact that anybody would be better than poor Quique Setién, who was dealt this horrible hand. The team is too old. It's as simple as that. It needs to be completely redone, rethought, and to be given a game identity again. And is Ronald Koeman the man who can do it within the season? No, it's going to take a while. And I don't think anyway, it was a conjunction. The stars aligned for this particular team from 2006 onwards up until about, 2015.
Yeah.
And with a prodigious generation of players, exactly like they aligned for Manchester United at one point. And not to the same extent, by the way. Just like they aligned for Arrigo Sacchi's Milan, at one point. And these are sides that, will be talked about as long as people talk about football as among the greatest. So we shouldn't put that's the problem. The bar is placed too high. It's placed much too high.
Yes.
Let's have them becoming a good team again, and not this absolutely awful thing, shadow ghost, shameful ghost that we saw against Bayern.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning. With all the breaking stories, post-match reaction.
Will he beat me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and for the following 2-3 weeks and get the better of me? Probably not.
And the best bits from off the ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
There's a lot of character to come back and put in a performance like we did tonight.
The OTB Brief with Now TV. Weekday mornings from 7:20 a.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the OTB Sports app. Now that the UEFA Champions League has returned, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to bring you another brilliant roadshow, but with a difference. Our very own Nathan Murphy will be joined by David Myler.
I just seen Kenny Dalglish show the corner of my eye.
Chris Sutton, Stilian Petrov, Neil Lennon and Jason McAteer.
You could keep a squad of 20, 22, 23 players happy.
For a very special remote roadshow. It can only be experienced by picking up our special code to view over Zoom, so keep your eyes peeled on how to win on our social channels. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back, get ready. See otbsports.com or search OTB Sports in the App Store for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
3 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. You're very welcome along. If you've just joined us, or indeed if you're one of our podcast listeners, then you're very welcome too. Best place to get our podcast these days, by the way, is on the OTB Sports app. Just search OTB Sports in the App Store and you can download it there, and you can subscribe. Hit subscribe to the podcast, and every time a new one drops, we'll ping you a little message if you turn on your notifications. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
This is definitely one of the best periods of football watching that I can remember since World Cup when you were a child. Because literally, you keep forgetting that, there's a Champions League semi-final on tonight. And there was decent football. I would say mediocre football last night. But it's been pretty good. I mean, is there something in this? Could we have this forever, do you think? Maybe?
No, obviously. I hope not. I hope that we don't have to take 4 months off from sport in order to
That's not what I
cram things
mean.
together.
I mean a brilliant end of season, straight knockout competition where the best teams in the world all play each other.
That is the only reason why this exists, is because we've had to cram things together. Like you were talking about the fact that the Europa League and the Champions League are all these rounds are just happening very, very quickly. You can't possibly have that happening year after year. Like, I ask you to go back just to last season and how absolutely sensational some of the Champions League was last season. This has been a thing for the last few years.
I will point you to the 3 weeks where there was no football between the end of the league and the Champions League final, and it was rubbish. And then the Champions League final was absolute pants because nobody played any football in ages.
So you just push that forward and you don't allow there to be a 3-week gap. Like, for me, I think you need a first and a second leg in all these Champions League ties, because you can get a double whammy of excitement. Maybe one leg of affairs in the Europa League is good, and you can have a sort of high stakes Sevilla versus Manchester United event like we had the other night, and things seem a little bit more significant than that competition. You have to go back to the two-legged ties in the Champions League. Like, look at the drama we saw last year. Let us not forget about Ajax and Spurs, and let us not forget about Barcelona and Liverpool, and even some of the ties we've had in previous years, like Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona. Those things don't happen without a second leg. Well, the drama's been brilliant this year, but not as good as previous years.
Man City would have gone through over 2 legs, and the 8-2, imagine the second leg of that. No thanks. Anyway, I want to move on because it's 4 minutes past 8 this morning. And the Irish Independent have done Mayo football a great service this morning. Michael Verney was obviously sitting down over the last couple of weeks, watching the snooker going, that Ronnie lad's not playing too badly here. This is very interesting, isn't it? He's playing behind closed doors. Ronnie. How is Ronnie keeping his mental side together? And he phoned up Steve Peters, the legendary Steve Peters, to talk about the chimp paradox, your inner chimp, all that kind of stuff. And obviously there's a connection between the failings and the fragility that Ronnie O'Sullivan has had since 2013, essentially, all the way through to 2020. And what other team in world sport has been as fragile as Ronnie O'Sullivan's in that period of time? But the Mayo footballers. So Michael Verney has kind of asked for some advice from Steve Peters about how he might go about fixing Mayo. And he's reluctant to say, look, you know, obviously all the usual caveats. I'd like to get in there, spend a bit of time with them, understand the nuance of the situation, the individual requirements of the people involved.
For a nominal fee.
I mean, look, the good of his health, for the endless gratitude of a county as rich in heritage and tradition and as battered by immigration and the vagaries of the economy as anybody, as Mayo have been. Like, I mean, imagine being, I suppose we know Nathan Murphy is the king of Mayo, and then Kevin Kilbane came and stole his crown. So we kind of know what
how low the bar is.
Well, yeah. And also the benefits of it. But I thought this was a great idea by Michael Verney. And then it turns out he's not the first person to try and come up with some help for Mayo, is he?
No. This is something that we've been looking into for quite some time. Who are the great minds of the world, the mind teachers of the world who can help Mayo? And there's no one better. Sorry, Steve Peters, than Uri Geller. So let's have a look back at the time. We did indeed speak to Uri Geller about Mayo. But first off, let's remind you the conversation we had with him about that infamous Euro 96 piece of sorcery that he pulled off when he moved the ball.
Now, you cannot debunk the fact that I moved the football away from Gary McAllister's foot in Euro 96. Some people were worried. You know, England is always better than Scotland. But some individuals, I won't name them, they were worried that Scotland will beat England. So they put me in a helicopter and I was circling around Wembley. This is a true story. You can check it out.
It was a true story. We did check it out. I mean, look, I don't know. Can you turn the camera to make it look that way? I don't know. But like, fair play. Uri Geller, he's got game, Owen. He
certainly does.
Hook, line and sinker at that point.
He did. Like, the question is, would you have been able to pull that off from the stands? Probably not. Definitely needed the helicopter on that particular occasion to move the ball. So we asked him about how do you apply that to something that's much closer to our hearts here in Ireland, which is, of course, the Mayo story. So we explained to him what's happened here, how a hex was put on the team in 1951, and it's been a long, long time since they've managed to get over the line. So we asked him why haven't Mayo been able to win the All-Ireland since 51, and what do they need to be able to do? Uri Geller.
What would you do for that group of players?
Well, obviously, first of all, I don't have to, but it's better if I meet them all, or the coach. So why don't you tell the coach to come? It's a beautiful, beautiful weather here. Look out here.
James Horn, if you're listening, you've been invited to Tel Aviv.
What's his name again?
James Horn.
James, I'm talking to you straight. Look into my eyes now. I'm looking straight into the lens. You have nothing to lose. You just buy a ticket and fly to see me. I'll invite you to my home. I'll teach you a few amazing techniques of mind power. You show that energy. You show what I taught you to the players, and you're going to start winning. You have nothing to lose. You'll at least enjoy a couple of days in Tel Aviv, and I'll take you around. I'll show you the museum I'm building. You know, I'm building an Uri Geller museum here. And, that's it. So I will try to remove the curse. I have ways of doing that.
I mean, that seems like an offer you can't refuse.
Well, clearly it was refused because Conor Callaghan tore them asunder in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. So clearly they didn't go to Tel Aviv after that warning. But there's still time. I mean, we've obviously got travel restrictions at the moment. But once they're lifted and Israel is on that green list, it is very much essential travel. So I'm sure the invite is still there.
I mean, that would actually be essential travel. You could get away with it. It's a look, you just need the right customs official on the way in saying, how you doing? I know what you were doing. I mean, for me, that would be the best use of resources that any intercounty could use. Never mind Steve Peters. I'll see your Steve Peters and I'll raise you Uri Geller.
For sure. So what Steve Peters has actually said today is interesting. He says, basically kind of speaking in common terms about what Mayo might be doing wrong. He says, are they able to process what they're meant to be doing on the day of competition, or are their minds taking them to do unreasonable emotional risks, or are they lacking focus? Do they get over errors in a game? Does that ring a bell for you, Mayo? It's quite simple stuff that you say, let's look at these as a team and as individuals, and let's work out what's best for them. The bottom line, working with anybody or any team, is they know what's best. They just need to discover it. It's not me that's the answer, but it might be the answer if you come up with a suitable enough fee for Steve Peters. You look at the Chimp Paradox and you look at the Google Books review of the Chimp Paradox, or the blurb of the Chimp Paradox, and ask yourself, do any of these questions pertain to you, Mayo? Do you sabotage your own happiness and success? Are you struggling to make sense of yourself? Do your emotions sometimes dictate your life? Yes, yes, yes. Not only do you need to read the Chimp Paradox, you need to actually hire Dr. Steve Peters to actually teach the Chimp Paradox to you. Like, I'd be interested, how do you even begin to explain the Mayo history to someone like Steve Peters? You know, like, so Steve, it all started in 1951, and the team basically riled up an angry sorcerer. And that is how it all started. And the sorcerer then sent foot soldiers of doom into County Mayo to ruin their hopes and dreams forever and ever. People such as Sean Boylan and Dean Rock and John O'Mahony. Yes, that John O'Mahony, Dr. Peters, the politician John O'Mahony, figured on the Senate as spokesperson for Fine Gael when it came to sport. That John O'Mahony, Steve Peters. Like, the whole story would just be a remarkable thing to teach to him. And I would also 100% listen to a Dr. Steve Peters podcast on how he actually discovers the history of Mayo as well, like where he's kind of watching games and he was like, there were how many people in the brawl? The ball bounced how many times over the bar? Lee Keegan threw what at that football? This is like just a remarkable wormhole that we can go down to. And you start to think, should we stop here? Or should we now start going back and looking at the writings of Sigmund Freud? Or perhaps someone like Ivan Pavlov, and seeing how their teachings would actually affect the world of Mayo. This is an unending road of greatness that we can go down here. The untapped potential that is psychology and psychiatry and how it is applied to Mayo sport. You
can put them on the couch, a la Tony Soprano, and you have a 7-season, 83 episode in 20 years' time. People will be making an hour-long podcast every week about each of the individual episodes. Fast forward to the very end there, though, and it's Steve Peters on a couch going, they wore me out, they rubbed me out. I'm a little nub of a man, no longer all of my spirit is gone. Because he couldn't do it, he couldn't fix them. Is this too cruel, Owen?
Yeah, like maybe it is. I mean, does Steve Peters then have to go into hiding for a little while? A la Dr. Jennifer Melfi, where he actually has to work from a motel for a little while because baying Mayo Mick has been at his door and he has to go on the run from Mayo Mick because he hasn't actually won the All-Ireland for Mayo. Is that the plot twist that we see here?
13 minutes past 8 this morning, and we took a tangent that we weren't sure we were going to take. But anyway, Shane Hannon, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are things?
Yeah, good. You're a Steve Peters fan, are you?
Yeah, to the extent that I think Ronnie O'Sullivan probably wouldn't still be playing the game. Certainly wouldn't be playing to the level that he's at if it wasn't for Steve Peters. So certainly someone very important in snooker history.
Yeah, I mean, certainly somebody very important in British cycling history as well. Heavily involved in that British cycling team, you know, giving evidence at various tribunals and stuff. So there's like a very interesting backstory there around Steve Peters, and I think it would behoove us all to just have a distance from all of this and keep an eye on it. Anyway, how are you getting on, Shane? What's going on in your world?
All good now. Can't complain. Still, it's a bit rainy in Monaghan this morning, I'm not going to lie, but it's grand. We've been fairly lucky with the weather over the last few weeks.
The psychic state of the nation was okay for a few days last week, and then it just crashed. I have a feeling that there's a crash coming. It didn't. The escapades at Berlin didn't help,
No.
It just, you would have been in Berlin if you were back in Dublin, right? that
I think only Owen Sheehan was there, wasn't it?
Well, you wouldn't showing off your triathlon psych.
No, I've actually never frequented Berlin, but
Really?
the scenes look like something from 10 years ago.
Even I've been in Berlin once.
Really? Mr. Brightside banging out of the walls?
A bit of banging techno downstairs. That was what was on the night I was there. Let's move on quickly. What have you got for us, Shane?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with the Europa League, given that the semi-final took place last night. Inter Milan, of course, winning 5-0 against Shakhtar Donetsk to secure their place in that final against Sevilla, which is this Friday in Cologne. So Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez both scoring a brace as they cruised into that decider. Antonio Conte's side winning that game in Dusseldorf. As I said, that game against Sevilla on Friday will take place in Cologne. Lisbon hosts the first of this week's Champions League semi-finals this evening as well. We're spoiled for choice. Both RB Leipzig and PSG are hoping to reach the final of European football's premier club competition for the very first time. Kickoff in that match is at 8 p.m. Neil Lennon admits getting through to the Champions League group stages is a priority for his Celtic. The Scottish Premiership champions host Iceland's KR Reykjavik in the first qualifying round of the competition this evening. They've not progressed to the main phase of the tournament since 2017, and the Celtic boss knows they need to put that right.
Well, it's one of the priorities of the season, really. So, I think the players will be fully focused on that. I think it's important for them. Obviously, it's important for the club. So, yeah, we've had a long time now back in, training. We've only had 2 competitive games. So, I think this game is really important for a lot of reasons.
Linfield face a very difficult trip to Poland tonight in their Champions League first qualifying round. The Northern Irish side are away to Polish title winners Legia Warsaw. Netherlands boss Ronald Koeman is the front runner to be the next Barcelona manager. The Spanish club sacked Quique Setién after their humiliating 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarter-finals. Koeman, Barcelona great of course, is said to be the preferred choice, with an announcement expected in the next few days. David Silva has joined Real Sociedad. The 34-year-old was a free agent after a decade at Manchester City. There will be a statue put up outside Manchester City's ground as well of David Silva. It was announced yesterday. Silva had looked set to join Serie A side Lazio, but signed a 2-year deal with the Basque club instead. Here at home, Cabinteely opened up a 5-point lead at the top of the SSE Airtricity First Division table last night with a 3-1 win at Longford Town. Drogheda are up to second, courtesy of a 1-0 win over Galway. A 9-man UCD beat 10-man Athlone by 2-1. Waterford go to Sligo Rovers in the Premier Division tonight. Kick-off at the showground is at 5:45. In the First Division, Cove Rounders face Wexford and Bray Wanderers entertain Shamrock Rovers 2. Those matches kick off at 7:45. Stuart Pierce has returned to West Ham as first-team coach. The former fullback will work alongside Kevin Nolan and Paul Nevin, who have also signed new contracts. Pierce had been part of manager David Moyes' staff during his first spell in charge back in 2018. To Gaelic Games, the Club Players Association have joined the GPA in backing a split season. The GA's Fixtures Review Committee is due to meet tomorrow. CPA boss Micheál Bridie says the current circumstances have presented the GAA with a golden opportunity to trial a clear split in the season. There's a 7-race card at Roscommon this afternoon, the first off there at 4:10. Meanwhile, the draw for the first round of this season's League Cup takes place this morning. All clubs from the Championship and below will be in the hat. Premier League sides enter the competition in round 2, while those competing in European tournaments come into the Cup in round 3. New Washington football team president Jason Wright, in American football by the way, says dropping the Redskins suffix was the right thing to do. The 38-year-old has become the first black person to hold the role in the NFL. Wright says it's time for the club to move forward and create a new history.
Retiring and rescinding the name is exactly where we should be as an organization, and looking forward to establishing a new identity that, again, is more than a name, embodies our history in the right ways, and looks to the culture we want to build in the future.
Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs plan to allow fans inside Arrowhead Stadium at 22% capacity when the 2020 NFL season begins. The Chiefs, who won their first Super Bowl in 50 years in February, play the Houston Texans on September the 10th. Supporters will be required to wear face masks and will also be separated into grouped pods inside the stadium. And finally, the Chicago Bears announced that Soldier Field will be closed to fans fully when they kick off their season.
All right, looking forward to that. We'll be reconstituting the snap very soon for you as well. Shane, good stuff this morning. Thanks a million. 19 minutes past 8. Here's what's coming up on the show. Between now and 10 o'clock, we have the very first of the new season's depth charts coming along. It's Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Wrap talking to us about the Liverpool depth chart. I are going to bring you the sports pages. Then after that, it's Deal or No Deal. We'll also round up some of the big sports news big football news with Nathan after 9 o'clock this morning, and we're talking about the importance of volunteers with Kieran Donaghy, and one of the most important volunteers in his life from Garvey's Tralee Warriors. And that's coming your way just after 9 o'clock this morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. This morning, we're looking at Liverpool in the depth chart. Have a look.
OTB AM.
Right, I'm delighted to say we got Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Wrap with us to kick off the first of our new season depth charts. The new season is just 3 weeks away, Gareth. Can you believe it?
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It feels like we've only just stopped and then we're straight back in again. But I guess if you're a football fan, that's what you want, and it's a nice break away from everything else that's going on in the world right now.
This is true. Football is finally fulfilling its function as the complete distraction we need from everything else. So when we were talking about doing these, I was thinking, the Liverpool one's actually not going to be that interesting because everybody knows their first team and it's set in stone. But once you start to get into it, you realise that actually there's quite a few talking points. And I suspect if you're a Liverpool fan, you're very interested to see what Liverpool are going to be able to do to make sure that they remain as not just the best team in England, but probably the best team in the world at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we already had the disappointment of not signing Timo Werner. It looked absolutely nailed on. He was fluttering his eyelashes at Liverpool for a long time, and it felt like, that was reciprocated the other way. And it looked like it was a definite transfer that was going to happen, that he was definitely going to come to Anfield. We all watched the videos, we all got excited about it, and we all said, well, what an upgrade he would be on the likes of Divock Origi and Shaqiri, who are the backup to the front three currently. And then Liverpool, pulled away from it, said it wasn't the right time, said, with the uncertainty around finances and football and fans being back in the ground, everything else, that they didn't feel it was right to spend that amount of money on a player. So that was disappointing, but also as well, it was a bit of a sign that, Liverpool do want to do something around the front three, around back up. I wonder how much of it was down to wanting to also shift Shaqiri, Origi out, and whether they'll still be able to do that now. Because I think everything's really up in the air, and it'll be interesting how the transfer market unfolds, because I think there's a little bit of everyone waiting to see what everyone else is doing.
Traditionally, if you look back to the glory days of Liverpool in the 70s and 80s, you can see that they have always had the philosophy of buying really good players and adding to the squad. You think of when Keegan leaves, they can survive because they're able to buy well. You think of adding Kenny Dalglish to the team. They were always able to go out and add players who either made an impact immediately or over a couple of seasons, even back to getting Barnes into the team. It's like, that's a big signing of a really top quality player. That hasn't quite really been how the last 18 months have gone. Since Van Dijk's arrival, obviously, you've got to take that. Are they not going to do that anymore? Is the team so good now that you can't actually buy somebody, even, the signing that they missed out on was somebody who was coming in essentially to be first sub off the bench for the front three?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's a very good point. I mean, it has no doubt changed. I mean, what I would add to what you said there is that Liverpool now have become a team who are not selling the best players either, and for a long time, that was the case. Coutinho most recently, but before that, Alonso goes, Torres goes. And it seemed to be that club players were using Liverpool as a stepping stone. I think that stopped, and that's a good thing. And we're managing to hang on to our stars now, and there's a lot to be said for that. And you look at sort of the appearances across the last 2 seasons, the core of the side has been playing together for 2 seasons now. And there's 1 or 2 areas of the pitch, I think, where you would say Liverpool could do with back up. Would you say that they could do with strengthening there? I think that's where the difficulty comes in, because, we've just won the league. We just won the World Club Cup. We're still clinging on to the European Cup for now until someone else wins it. So, it's hard to sort of get better that quality without paying out absolute fortunes. And I genuinely believe what Klopp says as well about sort of wanting to give players like Curtis Jones a pathway to the first team. Equally, someone like Harvey Elliott as well. He's only a teenager, Harvey, but anyone that's watched him play football is excited about him, because his confidence is unbelievable. What he's capable of at this young age is unbelievable. So will he be able to contribute around the periphery next season? Maybe. You've got Brewster coming back from his loan spell at Swansea as well. Maybe he gets another chance. So I understand that there's always a clamour to spend big, and I'm among it. I'd love, we're being linked with Thiago. I'd love to see Thiago playing for Liverpool. I'd love to see us spend the money, but also there's another side of my brain which says right now it feels a little bit wrong to be pushing for Liverpool to be spending millions and millions of pounds when we're still coming out of a pandemic, when Liverpool still don't know what the situation will be financially. And I've seen, some of our fans saying things like, are we the only club that's affected by this then? But obviously not. I mean, Arsenal have literally letting some staff go. Manchester United, David Gill at Manchester United has constantly talked about the effect on the finances there and how much they're losing through not having people in the ground. Because it's not just fans, it's sponsors, there's advertising that will be seeping away. The TV money is not what the TV money was. There's all little bits that they've lost out on. And then there's the uncertainty as well, like I mentioned before, of who you can actually shift out. So, Lovren's gone for us, Lallana's gone for us. So there's a couple of people off the wage bill. So that would suggest, there's something to spend there. But will they go mad and will they spend big? I think the team over anything suggests not. But I can still imagine one or two coming in.
It's an interesting point that you make about being able to hold on to the stars, and I guess there's a premium on holding on to what you've got in the current financial crisis, or the financial crisis that's coming down the tracks in a little while. And like I remember, was it last summer when Sadio Mane was semi-linked with Real Madrid? Maybe it was the summer before. Those links just don't happen this summer for that reason, but also because, like, you look at Friday night and Barcelona are a team who look in disgrace. Real Madrid don't exactly look like they're in an amazing place. I'd say if you're Sadio Mane, even if Liverpool weren't as high-flying as they were right now, you're not really looking at Spain and thinking I might get a better career there or a better chance of success there. So it's a win-win with everything that's happening around Europe at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, players have only got a relatively short time as a professional football player at the very top. But, all your dreams can be fulfilled at Anfield. It's not just a sort of, we're not having to lean on the history anymore and the romance of the club. We can say we're champions of the Premier League. We lifted the World Club Cup. We expect to go far in Europe next season. So all of those players that you mentioned and more will think, well, why would I leave right now? I'm having a great time here. So I don't imagine, you're right that the links aren't even there, and that when the links have been there, they haven't been from anyone you would really trust, because Liverpool have got them all tied up. I think that's another thing to think about the finances as well, is that, when FSG came in, they said that the finances behind the scenes were shocking, and a lot of players were on a lot of money who perhaps didn't deserve to be, and they moved more towards incentivised contracts. So that being the case, you would imagine it's fair to say that they've paid out quite a lot because Liverpool have won what they've won. There would have been all kinds of bonuses there. So I think people assume that there's a lot of money swirling around, and because Liverpool didn't really spend last summer, there's only really Minamino who's came in, that, there'll be loads of money to spend. I'm not too sure. I think they've rewarded the lads who were there, and I'm hoping that will be rewarded with loyalty back the other way. The only player really that there's a concern around at the moment is Gini Wijnaldum, because he's the only one who hasn't signed a longer-term contract. I'm not quite sure why that is. I'd like to see him sign. I think he's a good player for us. He's reliable, he's robust, he plays almost every game for us. But that seems to be hanging in the air. But other than that, all the big names, all the big stars, ordinarily in the summer, you would be really worried of all those names you said coming in to have a sniff, have a swoop. And it's just not happening this time around. I think we're going to be able to hang on to them all. So that means for me that, yes, strengthen around the periphery, do business if you can. But, as much as people clamour for transfers, I don't think it's urgent. I mean, if you said to me, we're going to start with the squad we've got, I'd be like, okay, I'm fine with that. I think we'll be okay. We've got the left back in from Greece, Kostas, and I think he looks great. He looks like a Robertson light, if you like. And Robertson's played an awful lot of football last 2 seasons. He's the one who you think he's not really got a break. Milner didn't want to play at left back anymore, so we did need to do some business there. We've done that one. I think maybe we need a centre half, and as I say, a top class backup, maybe for the front three. But beyond that, we're all right. We're fairly well stocked, and we've got some young kids coming through as well.
Oh, and this is the first of the depth charts that we're doing for new watchers, for new listeners. How does it work?
Well, for anybody coming to this fresh who wouldn't be familiar with our rugby series, I'm not sure what our crossover appeal is here. We're going to go position by position, pick the top 2 or 3 available talents in your team and put them in order. Usually when we do these things, we effectively pick a starting 11 or a starting 15 as it would be in rugby, and then go position by position in terms of second or third best. But with Liverpool, the first 11 basically picks itself, or at least it has done for this season. We may as well actually start with the front, because we've been talking a lot about that, Gareth. And what we're going to do is, obviously, it's Firmino, Mane, and it's Salah. You don't need to tell the audience that that's a starting 3. So the question here then is, who is your 4th choice attacker?
I mean, I guess the obvious one to say is Divock Origi, but he's really sort of split an opinion even more than ever now. And I think the season just gone was not his best, by his own admission, I would guess, as well. He didn't do so much, after being the star of the European Cup final, getting that goal that sealed the win against Tottenham Hotspur. He's not done so much this season. And then beyond him, you're looking at maybe Shaqiri. But the front 3 play so often that, it's not really mattered too much. Touch wood, we've been really lucky with injuries. We've got a sort of robust team. So we've not had to sort of lean on Divock that much. And again, it sort of begs the question of, well, who would want to come to Liverpool and take that role, knowing that you've got those front 3 ahead of you? I think that's quite difficult to recruit. Not impossible, but makes it difficult. So, yeah, Divock's probably the next one down. Then you've got Shaqiri. And I mentioned before that Ryan Brewster is likely to return to Liverpool. And I imagine get a chance. And the reason to say that is I think, people might say, okay, well, he was scoring goals for Swansea and the Premier League's a different kettle of fish, and I would agree with that. But I think if you listen to what Jurgen Klopp was saying when Daniel Sturridge left, he was talking then about Ryan getting a chance and about there being an opening there for him. Now, he did get a few little goals. Perhaps Klopp thought he didn't really take that chance, and that would be better served going out on loan. But he's been good on loan. Swansea want to keep him by all accounts. The fans love him there. There are other clubs sniffing around as well. So again, it could be, well, what kind of money could you get for him, and would that facilitate another deal, or will he stick with him and give him one more chance? It remains to be seen, but there hasn't been a lot of other links with forwards, which I think is interesting. The main sort of gossip at the moment, if you like, is surrounding Thiago. There's not been too much around anyone that would serve as a backup to the front 3.
So are we saying Origi is your first man off the bench, and then your 5th choice is Shaqiri, with 6th choice being Ryan Brewster? Are we looking at it like that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you've got Harvey Elliott kicking around as well, who I mentioned before, and he's made a couple of appearances on the bench. But I mean, he is literally a teenager. I think you're more likely to see Harvey in the cup competitions than you are in the Premier League or the Champions League. But we shall see. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for Harvey. He is really that good. It's worth remembering that when Liverpool signed him, Real Madrid were having a sniff round. So he's got a lot of talent, and he may well be one that comes off the bench a few times, but proves himself, and then ends up higher up the pecking order than what we're currently saying. But right now, I think Origi's top of the list. He's the man with the shirt. Albeit that he may well go. There was interest in him previous, but I don't think Liverpool are interested in selling him on the cheap. I think they would rather keep him in place and know what you've got with him than get you up for a lower fee. So it'll be interesting if anyone wants to stump up for Origi. I think Liverpool would sell, but they'd have to pay top whack.
Bournemouth getting relegated was a bit of a disaster for those fringe players around Liverpool.
Absolutely.
40 million quid Bournemouth have given Liverpool over the last 4 or 5 years for various fringe players who never quite made it at Bournemouth. Let's talk about the midfielders next, because I think this is like we can literally spend a full hour on the Liverpool constellation of the Liverpool midfield. There's generally 4 players into 3, but then when you look back at the various formations and partnerships that he's played, like where does Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain fit into the depth chart, for example? Give us your first 3 anyway, and that'll Jordan Henderson's in, right?
Jordan Henderson's in, yeah, he's the captain. Who else is in there? Wijnaldum's in, who I mentioned before, albeit that there is this thing about his contract, but I don't get the impression he's going. I think he might see out his contract, but I don't think he's going to go now. So Wijnaldum's in there with him. And then Fabinho. Fabinho's been brilliant. One of my favourite players at Liverpool right now. And I think we can expect a lot from him in the coming season. So I would say that's your starting midfield, the people with the shirts, if you like. You mentioned Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think it's an interesting one with him in terms of, well, what is he and where's he going to play and what's he doing? And, I think one of the reasons he got frustrated at Arsenal was being used in a variety of positions. And yeah, here he is at Liverpool, and it may well be the same again. We mentioned the front three before. There's an argument to say he can play in the front three, and he has done at times, although he's not looked particularly comfortable there for me. He's even played at fullback in his career, but I'm not sure how well that would go down with him if you asked him to start filling in there. But yeah, he's an interesting one, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and he's been frustrated, and he's shown it as well. I mean, there's a game where he was substituted, and he was punching the seats when he got taken off. And he later apologised, but he said himself it's been a frustrating time. I mean, he obviously he was out for a season essentially. So maybe there is another dawn for him, but I don't think he's anywhere near a starting position in midfield right now.
And this is the thing that we often encounter when we do a depth chart, is that you have somebody who's versatile, and that automatically means that they're lower down the depth chart in a couple of positions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the case with him. Like there are a lot of people, including myself at times, who say, well, what is he? And where is his best position? And what games are you playing him in? I mean, there's an argument to say it's a nice problem to have in that, he could fill in a number of positions. But I think, as I said, he came to Liverpool hoping he was going to be coached and be starting in one particular position. I mean, don't get me wrong, when he's been at his best, when he's bursting from midfield and scoring the goals like he did against Manchester City in Europe and things like that, he's been brilliant. But finding that form, more regularly has been difficult for him.
How likely is it that Naby Keita becomes a starter this season? Because his form before the end of the resumption was pretty good. Yeah,
he looked good when football came back on June the 21st. Naby, I think, has been one of the stars, and I think we've all been waiting for him to explode. We saw what we saw him do at Leipzig. We paid a big fee for him. We then had to wait a season for him actually to arrive at Anfield, and then since he's been here, you've seen flashes of absolute brilliance from him at times, and it's just frustrating that he can't do that more. I think he's been hindered by some injuries. He could do with a little bit more luck around that. But he seems to have settled a bit more now as well. I think, this is important as well in that, you see him now, he seems to be having a bit more of a laugh with the players when you see footage from training. Stuff was coming out where he was holding the Premier League and he was laughing along with some of the lads. Now I think maybe he's getting a bit more of a grip of the language as well. So yeah, I've got high hopes for him. I think against some of the sides that choose to sit in against Liverpool, which is quite a lot these days, he's the type of player who can unlock the defence. And everyone knows that, often we play the three that I said before in midfield, and they're almost acting as a wall while the fullbacks crack on with creating chances. But I think sometimes you need a little bit more than that, particularly, as I say, at home when sides are sitting in. And I feel like Naby can be that extra little bit of creativity from midfield. So we shall see. But right now, I would say he's higher up the pecking order. He's closer to getting a regular start, but he's still not budging any of those three for me right now. But yeah, high hopes for him though.
Well, let's spill forward 2 weeks when the Thiago deal is done after Bayern Munich have officially won the Champions League and he's come up with his Champions League medal and his amazing career. Where does he fit? Where would he fit at that point in? Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting with him. I wonder myself. I mean, you look at who he's played for and where he's playing right now. You look at his quality. You look what he's able to do. But then you also look at his age and his injury record, and it's sort of balancing up the two. And with Klopp signings, traditionally there's been quite a few of them now. Robertson's one, Fabinho's one, where they have a settling in period because they almost aren't used to the pace of the training, the pace of the games, how much they're expected to press and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder with Thiago about that. I mean, obviously Bayern aren't shy of pressing themselves. And I do kind of think, is he one where he's coming straight out the box and he's ready to go compared to maybe some of the other lads that we've bought in the past? I'd like to think so. Where he fits in straight away is really interesting though, because I mean, who do you drop out of those that I've already said? It's really different. You know, you don't really. I think a lot of Liverpool fans still, despite everything he's done, despite everything he's won now, would probably say, well, what about Henderson? But that just feels incredibly harsh on Henderson. You know, and I know sometimes football is harsh and managers sometimes are ruthless, but I don't know. I kind of feel like he'll be sort of getting 1 or 2 starts, kicking around on the bench at first and then feeling his way in and have to prove his worth, I guess, because you can't displace the boys, basically, that you've got now. And I think Klopp has shown that is his go-to midfield. All the big games, he turns to those lads. And I would expect that to sort of be the same for the foreseeable, really.
And then James Milner plays 35 games next season and picks up medals in every competition he plays.
Yeah, and he's great to have around, James. And you know, I think, you know, at some point, you wonder every pre-season, I think, you know, will this be the one where James Milner's legs go? And then they do the testing pre-season and Milner's always top of the list because he doesn't half look after himself. And he's one of the most motivated figures at Liverpool, I think there is. The manager loves him, all his teammates love him. And he's one who can fit in anywhere. I mean, I don't think he wants to play full-back anymore. He's made that perfectly clear on a number of occasions. But I think he's a really useful player to have as well when you just want to see out a game, when you want a little bit more nous on the pitch. There was a moment last season, I can't remember the game now, but Liverpool just needed to see it out. And Milner just headed straight for that corner, 80-odd minutes, battled off 3 of them for what seemed like 2 or 3 minutes, and then eventually it went out for a Liverpool throw. But it was exactly what needed to happen at that point in the game, and that's what he brings. He's got that experience. I think the other thing, you know, on a general point, just to go off to the left for a second, about this squad now is, we've always said for years as Liverpool fans, you need people in the dressing room who know what it takes to win a league. But we've now got a dressing room full of them. They've all done it. They know, and not only that, they've done it, but they got 97 points the season before as well, which in any other season would have won you the league. So I think that's really important now as well when we're talking about depth and we're talking about who they might buy. Again, how difficult is it to get better than that? And Thiago, you know, look, I guess on paper is better than some of our midfield, but he's got to get used to the system, the culture, the manager and everything else. And it might not even happen.
So I'm hearing Keita's 4, Milner and Oxlade-Chamberlain are 4.5, 5.
Yeah.
And then let's be having you, Thiago. Let's see what you can do.
They all drop down when Thiago comes in. Here's the... James Milner is going to retire after Curtis Jones, isn't he? Or Harvey Elliott. They're all going to be retired before James Milner at this point. Every year we're going to be having this conversation saying James Milner is 4.5, 5 at this point. But no, that sounds like a pretty good depth on midfield. Will we move on to the backs? Will we have a look at what's happening at the heart of defence? So obviously this kind of like much of the team is picking itself at the moment between Van Dijk, Joe Gomez. Your option number 3, though, there could have been an argument that perhaps Dejan Lovren was pushing ahead of Joel Matip. That argument is done. Dejan Lovren is out of the club. Does that mean that Liverpool now need to dip back into the transfer market to increase that depth?
Yeah, I think it's interesting on that. Matip doesn't have the best injury record. Joe Gomez has been unfortunate with injuries, but I think some of his injuries are more, you know, it's not sort of, he's had impact injuries is what I'm trying to say. So I don't think there's like a huge conversation about Gomez and injuries where maybe that there is a little bit with Matip. In terms of depth at centre-half, I think still, maybe one more. I wonder whether you can get an experienced player in who sort of wouldn't mind being in and around the squad and on the bench and there to break glass and use if you want. I'm thinking someone like when we had Ragnar Klavan, you know, he thought he'd won the lottery when he got to come to Liverpool and was happy to just be in and around the squad. And then when called upon, he was okay and he did a job. And I wonder about a centre-half like that because there does seem to be quite a big drop-off once you pass the players we've mentioned there. Because then you're looking at Hoover, you're looking at Van der Berg, and they're young lads, they're teenage lads, and there's a lot being said about them being promising and everything else, but you don't really want to be going into any sort of prolonged period of fixtures with teenage lads at centre-half, I wouldn't say. So you've got the option that Fabinho can move back into centre-half, and he's done that before for Liverpool, but I think you miss him in midfield. But then back to the conversation we just had a second ago, I guess if you're moving Fabinho into centre-half in a situation where you need him to, If we've got Thiago, well, he's not missed as much. So the stuff there, I think it'll depend on what Liverpool can do and what's out there. And I've no doubt at all that they're having a look, because, you know, Lovren wasn't the most loved player at Liverpool. I think it's fair to say. I think a lot of fans were sort of quite glad to see the back of him in the end. But I mean, you know, last season he's made 15 appearances for Liverpool. Season before he's made 18. So he was still sort of getting a game here and there, and filling that with a teenage lad doesn't quite seem to fit when you think that Liverpool could be fighting on quite a lot of fronts. They'll want to defend the title. They'll want to go deep into Europe. I don't imagine they'd do anything different in the League Cup or the FA Cup to what they did last season. I think you see the kids or you know, in those competitions. But the other thing to bear in mind that I've been thinking about as well is if you look at the fixtures and how they will run next season, it's a game every 3 days. It's absolutely relentless because obviously we've lost some time. So I think you've got to turn to the squad a little bit more. So with all that in mind, I think, yeah, maybe they do look to recruit at centre-half.
So it sounds to me like Fabinho is actually the number 3 there, and that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I'd say so. The way things stand, I would say so. I mean, Matip's been really good at times. I think he's a little bit underrated because of the injuries had and stuff like that. I think he improved, he grew into himself. He was first choice at one point. But I think Joe Gomez has got the shirt next to Van Dijk right now. I mean, that's the one we really don't want to happen is anything happening to Van Dijk. But he's been an absolute rock and played virtually every game. And seems to, you know, shrug off any idea of injury. Long may that continue, because I don't think we want any period without Van Dijk kicking around. But yeah, Van Dijk's obviously top. Gomez alongside him, and yeah, Fabinho did absolutely fine at centre half, and he's played fullback in his career as well. He's fullback at Monaco, so I don't think he'd have any trouble slotting in the defence if we need him to. Then you've got Matip. And then the kids. But as I say, I think someone comes in between those options.
And the full-backs are fairly straightforward, are they?
Sorry, what was that?
The full-backs are very straightforward.
Yeah, pretty much. And certainly now that we've recruited at left-back, so we've got Tsimikas in. And I think that was the big problem, having a left-footer that could stand in for Robertson. Milner did it. But Milner didn't enjoy it, and Milner was vocal about not enjoying it. I think also as well, you know, for all that we love Milner, and we were joking before about sort of his age and the fact that he seems like he'll go on forever. I think the way Liverpool used the full-backs was a little bit testing for Milner, because, you know, you really are sort of up and down for the whole of the game. You're expected to put balls in the box, and then you're expected to be defending your own box very soon after. And I think he did find that a little bit of a test. That, you know, picked up 1 or 2 bookings there. Had a tough time against Zaha, I seem to remember as well. And pretty much said in an interview, I don't want to do that again, you know, not for any kind of prolonged period. So Liverpool have sorted that out now. They bought someone there. We've seen various sorts of stick and plaster options at left back that didn't really work. And then beyond that, you were going all the way down to, I think, Adam Lewis, someone like that, who's, you know, a young lad, and again, someone you wouldn't expect to see regularly in the Premier League at this stage. So, yeah, Robertson first choice, Tsimikas second choice. On the other side, obviously, Trent, who was absolutely brilliant again last season, his first choice, and is going to play 99% of the games, you would imagine, in the league. And then beyond that, you've got Nico Williams, who's done really, really well. Looked really confident. Looked less confident when he played him on the wrong side, when he played him against Brighton. He got had a bit of a tough time and ended up taking him off, I think, there. But on the right, he's looked absolutely fine. He's looked very much sort of Trent light, likes getting forward, not afraid to try a shot. And it looks like he's being coached to be the backup to Trent. So I think, yeah, that's done and dusted for the fullbacks.
And then obviously it's Alisson down to Adrian in goals. I presume there's going to be no movement there even around Adrian this off-season.
Is Karius not kicking around again?
Yeah, Karius is kicking around, but I'd be very, very surprised to ever see him in a Liverpool team again. It's Adrian. Listen, some people were harsh, I thought, towards the end of last season about Adrian. When yes, he made 1 or 2 mistakes, but I kind of think, what are you expecting from a backup goalkeeper? I think he did fine across the course of the season. He was obviously called in unexpectedly day 1 against Norwich last season when Alisson was injured. And he did absolutely fine for me. Look, did make one or two mistakes, but I'm all right with that. He's a backup goalkeeper, and Alisson's one of the best goalkeepers, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. So there's going to be some drop-off. But yeah, it's those two and Karius. I'm not expecting to see him in any time soon. I think we probably see Kelleher before you see Karius.
Just a last one for me then, Gareth. You obviously broke down the depth chart there very well. It kind of removes the possibility of a real bolter coming through because they're well stacked in every position. But if I had to push you on one of the kids that we haven't really mentioned there, making a big push, like I'm talking about Harvey Elliott here, Curtis Jones, Rhian Brewster, which of those are you expecting to make a bolt if one of them wants to do so?
I would say out of those, that Curtis Jones is probably the most promising in terms of you've already seen him fairly regularly starting to pop up now in match day squads. And I'm not looking out of place when he does get on the pitch either, more importantly. Again, he seems to understand the system. He's got the legs to get up and down the pitch. More than that as well, he's got the stature. I think that's the key thing. I think with Elliott, he's got all the skill in the world, but he still does look like a boy, basically. And you kind of think, could he get bullied a little bit by Premier League defenders? Whereas Curtis Jones, he's got the confidence, he's got the cockiness, but he's also got the physical stature. So for me, he's the one that benefits from Lallana leaving. I think he gets the minutes that Lallana was getting. He hopefully pops up at Old Trafford and scores like Lallana did last season. But yeah, Curtis Jones for me.
Gareth, great stuff. Thanks a million. You've been great with your time. Enjoy the shortest off season of all time. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a million, man.
Cheers, fellas.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yeah, you're welcome back. It appears Jura's microphone has fallen to pieces on him. I'm
back.
There he is. It's hard for me to appreciate what's going on here because I can get your video feed on a little bit of a delay, and I just saw you scrambling around there on delay. So at least I managed to save the day.
This week's edition of Dadcast is 37 minutes. It was supposed to be like about an hour, but we got 25 minutes in, and I was like, oh, this record button on the Zoom, I'm supposed to press that at the start, aren't I? And then I pressed it, and Nathan's face is like, because the little recording suddenly icon appears. So there was, that's the first time that's happened to me in 21 years of doing this. And, there you go. I'm just back and I'm like chatting away with no microphone on. Clever.
I would say Nathan was particularly annoyed with that. All the pre-prepared jokes that he actually used up, and then he's got to redo the pre-prepared jokes, thereby proving that they were pre-prepared jokes.
Well, I mean, everybody knows they're pre-prepared, like practice for hours and hours. That's how you get good at this stuff. You practice in the mirror, or on your audience. His kids are like strapped to the chair and they're not allowed to leave until they're actually laughing at his jokes. That's...
It's actually a Zoom chat with just himself, clicks record, and then Chromecast that Zoom recording onto the TV for everybody to watch. And then it's like, good to go.
That's a good idea. It's 8:52. We'll try all this again. The Nike Football 2021 Liverpool FC away kit features a vibrant teal and black colourway, drawing on cultural references from across the city. The gold Premier League winners patch is available to be printed on new sales of the 2021 away shirt. The new kit is available to pre-order in-store and online right now. And every morning this week on OTB AM, we're giving you the chance to win a €100 voucher for the Liverpool FC store in the ILAC Centre in Henry Street in Dublin. 3 ways of entering the competition this morning to put yourself in with a chance of winning. Number 1, share OTB AM where you're watching and tag @OffTheBall. On Twitter, just retweet this morning's OTB AM and tag @OffTheBall. Or better still, WhatsApp us a screen grab of how you're watching or listening to the show at 087 9 180 180. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
So we'll start with otbsports.com. This is the homepage of our website this morning. And the two faces of Neymar. Is it the Brazilian's time to sparkle? The shaved head and the beard. That's far better than the highlights, apparently. All this stuff actually matters. Daniel Cormier's legacy, grit and determination personified, is our UFC story this morning. Quique Setien sacked as manager of Barca. The axe had been hanging over him a long time. David Silva returns to La Liga with Real Sociedad. There is a blast from the past. I bring you to the sports pages this morning. A bunch of different stories happening. So Lukaku scoring. The flat track bully that is Lukaku scoring the 4th and 5th goals in a 5-0 win. That never happens. Frenchman stands in the way of PSG glory. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. United's recent history suggests it will not be easy for Solskjaer to kick on. So Jamie Jackson sounding a note of caution. And then loads of rugby coverage ahead of the restart of the domestic rugby. McFadden faces a fitness race against time. Really awful news for Ferguson McFadden. He's popped a calf. He's out for 6 weeks. So that's probably him done in a Leinster jersey unless he makes it back a little bit ahead of time. And the granny rule and Leinster school kids are the way forward. Gavin Comiskey's piece this morning suggesting that the days of players coming over and qualifying for Ireland through residency are done and dusted. Pink balls and early starts for tests. This controversy about the cricket not getting finished on time. Interesting piece from John Fogarty this morning. The best bit of public relations the GPA has ever done. It may well be. There's now a row emerging, Owen, to see who was actually responsible for the notion of splitting the season, because it looks like it's a done deal. Before there's even been a conversation about it, it's now so popular that there is a row about who came up with the idea. John Horn's like, well, we were talking about this all the time. And John Fogarty's like, well, maybe the GPA knew that this was coming and they got out ahead of it, and now they look very proactive. I mean, does it really matter who had the best idea? I'm not sure. The Mirror, Anfield Wrap. We've just had Gareth Roberts on from the Anfield Wrap, but they're already talking about the end of days for Jurgen Klopp, which is like many years in the distance. The Liverpool job could be his last job. I'm going to take a year off in 2024, and if I don't miss it, that'll be the end of me as a coach. All these like deadlines for stuff. What if it turns out that he wants to go on and become the longest serving, longest tenured Liverpool manager? You know, maybe he becomes the new Alex Ferguson and keeps going until he's 70. Who knows? Root backs early start. That's the cricket story. And hard to join Tottenham, which was the story that they had yesterday in the same place. I'm almost certain that story, exact same story, was in the exact same spot on the back of it. And City to unveil statue of Silva. We'll come back to that. Split decision. CPA urged GAA to make call on dividing season. So CPA urging or adding their voice to the chorus that everybody else is now on track for. Pardon me. Munster back in action after COVID-19 scare. So all negative tests returned from Munster's perspective, which means that they're all back in training and totally good to go. Root exasperated by shortest test in England for 33 years, even though they're in the midst of a heat wave. They weren't able to get the test against Pakistan finished. Barcelona turned to Koeman in hour of need, which is I don't know, I'd like to see, is Ronald Koeman going to be able to manage the Netherlands as well in the Euros next year, or is that him done now? He's given up the chance to manage in the Euros to be the Barcelona manager for essentially 6 months. Fahy, the leader of Pool Pack. Niamh Fahy is the new captain of Ireland, or new captain of Liverpool, sorry, and it says it's beyond her wildest dreams. The sponsors are sticking with the FAI for the rest of the year. 3, you're gone, Klopp. That's the same story there, that he's on his way out. Defiant, under fire, United keeper. I'll keep her hold of my job. So that's David De Gea staying. Luke away now. Ole, I don't know if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is looking at Romelu Lukaku thinking I want a bit of that in my team, because I don't think he does. Klopp plans to take a year off. That's the same story. And then that brilliant story that we were talking about earlier on. Unlocking the chimp could lead Mayo to promised land, says Rocket Mine Guru. Michael Verney's done some good work here. Talked to Steve Peters, who reckons he could fix Mayo. You know, everything's fixable. We know that. Dub's show must go on. County Board continue play despite COVID cases. So club matches are continuing. Dublin County Board have issued reissued guidelines or restated their guidelines. And Canaan, favourite Gaiath, rock solid in stellar Juddmonte. So that's Mick Canaan talking to the Racing Post today. And Paris Saint-Germain are their favourites against RB Leipzig tonight. Where are we starting on?
David Silva, set to be etched out in granite, limestone, marble.
Copper.
Sure what.
It'll be copper.
Copper.
Aren't all statues these days copper?
Well, what's the major rock that is the bedrock of the UAE? What is there? Could there be
oil?
Shipping in a cap there?
Plastic? Would it just be a plastic kind of rubber? Vulcanized rubber?
Vulcanized rubber. So there's a vulcanized rubber statue of David Silva going up outside the Etihad soon. Too soon? ? Too soon? Basically, is the point I'm making to you. Like, you think that this is far ahead of time. That you basically are. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you basically think people should be dead before they get a statue.
I mean, a little bit, yeah. Like, a couple of things, right? Have we not just watched the greatest dismantling of statues in human history recently, where we're questioning the whole point of putting up statues and having anybody be elevated above their peers? So on that level, like in the grand scheme of the sweep of history, are we sure that a statue of David Silva right now, while he's not finished playing, is merited? Does this mean Sergio Aguero also has to get one? Like, yes, because Aguero's achievements, it's possible to argue, are greater and more meaningful than Silva's, I think. So everybody gets one. So Mancini gets one, Pellegrini gets one. Like who doesn't get one? Pep gets one.
Definitely, if you're picking between them, Aguero is the guy who gets the statue. He definitely is ahead of David Silva. Like I'd be interested. You know the way there's all these like EDL people camping out to protect statues around the UK at the moment. Is like Graham Souness going to be camped out in front of the David Silva statue, ensuring that nobody actually pulls it down, considering he's like the greatest fan of David Silva that's ever existed. Maybe maybe we need to wait a little bit longer to actually see who is the greatest from this era, or wait for the era to finish. Now, I do think that your way is one way of looking at it, but I wonder, do we actually just respect the dead way too much, and actually we should be respecting them a little bit more while they're alive? And actually the fact that you have to wait for somebody to pass on before giving them a statue, I'm not sure if I necessarily subscribe to that theory. I think it's kind of nice to have a statue of somebody while they're still alive. We don't necessarily need to wait for their obituary to actually realise that somebody has had greatness. And if they genuinely feel that Silva is a level above everybody else in that Manchester City era, because it is the first truly sensational era in Manchester City's history where they are one of the best teams in the continent and in the world, then they should erect that statue. But I just disagree that he is the best.
Get a big screen outside the stadium and put on a loop highlights of his best passes and goals and free kicks and whatever it was, and that's actually paying better testimony to him than giving him a statue. I just think the other aspect of it is Manchester City need to create some sense of belonging and history around the stadium. When you go to Manchester United and you go to Old Trafford, they have a museum and they have trophies and they have history, and they have the clock stuck at the time from the Munich air disaster, and it's like you feel that this is something that's absolutely rooted in the past and is a long continuum. At Manchester City, you don't have that same feeling. So I get why they're trying to do this. It's like we've got to create our own history. And in 20 years' time, kids will come and go, who's that guy? Who's like, oh, he was our best player when we became a super club. He was one of those players, one of the many, many signings that we made who turned out to be better than Robinho, who thought that he was signing for United. And he knew which club he knew which side his bread was buttered on, and that made him a hero in our eyes. Like, it seems a little plastic to me.
On the subject of statues that have been erected quite soon after a player's career, like Thierry Henry has a statue at Arsenal. And when that happened, I was like, fair enough. Greatest ever Premier League player.
The Premier League it's a false duality.
Possibly the greatest ever player, full stop.
Maybe, is it not a bit soon? Like, are you know, and actually, you know what?
Did you realise, though?
Did that going up, did that inspire the next generation to go on and win European Cups? Or was that like, all right, 10 hats on that now? When did that happen? How much did they win after that?
But it's only gone up in was 2000 and... I don't know when it went up. It's definitely within the last 10 years. And maybe it'll take... a child to actually go up and actually be inspired by the Thierry Henry statue and for him to have a great career. But that's not, do people genuinely believe that that's what statues are for? That it is there to have some sort of material impact on the results of a team? Of course not. It is to commemorate great players, or to actually signify that this great player once played for this club and we love this player at this football club. That's kind of what it is. They're reading into it more than just an item to remember somebody. I think is a little bit pointless, because it'll never inspire another generation. It'll never actually have a material impact on anything.
It's just a decoration.
Yeah, I think so. I've got no issue with that Henry statue going up whatsoever. I don't think it's too soon at all. He had
2011.
Was it 2011? Right. Okay. That was before his second stint at the club, was it?
Come on, that's a bit lame.
That is quite soon.
So he goes back into the dressing room after that, and actually he did all right. can people tell him what to do? Can the young players like criticise him if he's actually phoning it in training? They can't. You can't be putting that's like essentially Barcelona have put up a metaphorical statue to Messi over the last couple of years, and he's still pulling his weight for most of the season. But the rest of them are like, look, what's the point? You know. I don't know.
Nobody can push the statue around. I don't know. Like maybe they didn't realise that he was going to come back to the club at that point. I think that's there was a clear realisation late in his career that this guy was one of the best players to ever play for the club, and he was always going to get a statue. I just don't think what's the point in like hanging around waiting for somebody to get old and grey and waiting for them to come back to actually unveil their own statue in a little while. Do it when you know that they're young and that they can have their.
Give everybody a statue. I say a statue for everyone.
Like, why not?
Give Robinho his statue. Sure, wasn't he the signing that heralded everything going that one way? And sure, all the troubles that he had in his life afterwards, what of them? Sure. They can pull the statue down in a couple of years' time when we all find out about them. What's next?
Like a Khaldoon Al-Mubarak statue could be next up as well for Manchester City. Next up, what will we talk about next? So we're going to get into Ronald Koeman later on. Oh, let's talk about Munster-Leinster. Sorry. So this is like covered quite a bit in the newspapers today. Ethan Asewa and Johnny Sexton and Ronald O'Gara, rather, were out doing press yesterday. So they're covered in a lot of the newspapers this morning. A couple of interesting things in the Nasewa comments, talking about RG Snyman. He says, makes a slight comparison, a sort of a bleak comparison between himself and Brad Thorne. And he says he's a specimen, there's no doubt about it. When you have someone who has the speed to go along with that and probably a different skill set from the rest, and that's what lifts and will continue to lift the Munster forwards to a new level. Certain individuals have that physique, the change that they can make to the attitude around them. It's no different to Brad Thorne and the influence he had throughout all the different clubs around the world. So all I'm hearing here is that after Leinster managed to pluck the best talents from around the world to win their Heineken Cup with Brad Thorne in tow, Munster are merely following the model of looking outside their own province to bring in great international stars like RG Snyman and Damien de Allende. And I'm sure that is striking fear into the heart of every Leinster supporter around Ireland, Ger.
Brad Thorne basically had like a Zlatan-style career where everywhere he went, league titles and European Cups followed and World Cups in different codes. So that's very high praise from somebody who obviously witnessed firsthand the material impact somebody like Brad Thorne can have. And I think, you know, this is Ozymandias. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. I am king of kings. The rest of the world are genuinely worried about what's going to emerge from Munster as the chrysalis unfurls. What colour? Well, it's obviously a giant red butterfly, but is it a red moth coming, bringing death? Does the moth signify death for the rest of Europe, Owen? Yes, it does. Because right now, expectations among Munster fans should not be any higher than being the best team in Europe. Look at the quality of the coaching ticket that they put together. Look at the massive investment that they made in 2 World Cup winners. Look at the finally largely fit squad they have, with the exception, obviously, of I think Ty Burn is out for the rest of the season. And obviously, we still wait to see Joey Carbery back, and you know, fingers crossed he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But like, you must be unbelievably excited to be a Munster rugby fan at the moment. Like, what a team they've put together.
It's Galactico-esque in terms of what they've done in this imposed off season. It's definitely going to be novel to see players of that quality going out and representing Munster over the next little while. That'll wear off after a little while, and you'll see kind of what level they actually settle at. And it'll probably be next season before you start to kind of appreciate what they can actually do for the club. And I guess what Van Gran and their connection is as well, because that's possibly why this has happened as well, why there has been a bit of a South African influence on Munster as well, that the coaching ticket has been based from that country now for the last 2 tickets that the coaching team has had. So I don't know, I'm not convinced that this is automatically going to be uber success, considering the gap between Munster and Leinster was fairly large. But I think Alan Quinlan has always made the point that the gap between Leinster and Munster has always been large, because 1 to 23 Leinster are just so much better than Munster, rather than 1 to 15. 1 to 15, you could nitpick a few positions here and there where Munster might make the edge. You see the Munster players who get caps for Ireland and who start for Ireland, but it's really, when you look through the bench, that's when Leinster really have the jump on Munster, and they've been able to close out games so well, kill teams down the stretch. And I think that Leinster were possibly 20 points better than Munster before lockdown. I think they're now 8 points better than Munster, but on any given day, that's just over a one-score game. And I think if Joey Carbery comes back and is still on the trajectory that we saw before his terrible run of injuries, I think that closes down to an even smaller gap, especially if Sexton goes the other way. But that brings us nicely on to Johnny Sexton, because Izan Asewa has been talking about this imposed sabbatical that a lot of players have had to do this year. Asewa, of course, took some time out of the game, came back a new man after his own sabbatical, and he says you'd be able to get over niggles that you had. That's one of the points he made with the lockdown. There would still be enough time to get gains physically and mentally, even with all the distractions that were going on. It was the perfect time to refresh. I can see Johnny Sexton playing until he is 42 if he wanted. There might be a slight exaggeration in that quote, but maybe there's not. Maybe there is like a situation here where we see Johnny Sexton going for a long time here and is still playing at a fairly decent level, a very decent level, and he is still the best out half in Ireland. In that world, that is a terrifying prospect for the Munster fan, because that, I think, does keep Munster at arm's length for a little while longer. Like he says,
7 more years of Johnny Sexton, according to Izan. That's a lot.
Yeah, not bad. Nasewa says he's spoken to players all over the world during the time, and he says if I can get another year out of this, that's the way players who've been speaking to him, that's the things that they've been saying. He says someone like John Afoa, who's been putting his head in a scrum for 17 years, is feeling great and knows he can go for another year with ease. They just have to be conscious about hitting the ground running and managing that as soon as rugby kicks off again. So it's a good time to be in your twilight years in your rugby career, according to Izan Asewa.
Yeah, look, the restart of the rugby season, you're going to have some fairly serious injuries over the next couple of weeks, because they haven't had full contact the way they're going to have in match situation. You started to see the pads started to go on in the NFL, and already there's a bunch of ACLs have been blown out in the first couple of training sessions. So this is, I think, what we saw with the Bundesliga and what we saw with the NRL when they came back. Now, it didn't seem to happen that much in English football, or as much as maybe they were a little bit later on. They got to witness some of the stuff, so you'd hope that there aren't too many serious injuries. But I hope he's right. Another 4 or 5 years, Johnny Sexton keeping the seat warm for whoever's coming next, and driving standards wouldn't be the worst thing, would it?
No, it absolutely wouldn't. And I guess this is still a question that needs to be answered from Leinster's perspective as well. When does Ross Byrne start making the step up where there is a proper challenge for that 10 jersey? I'm sure as a Leinster fan, you'll admit that there really has never been a proper battle since Carbery has left. Byrne has been excellent, and he has been composed, and he has definitely shown a cool head, probably beyond his years a little bit. But I don't think we've ever seriously got into a conversation where it's like Sexton's Leinster jersey and his position in that team is seriously under threat. That probably needs to start happening soon for Leinster. Even if Sexton does go to 42, there will likely be a drop-off at some point.
It has to happen for Ireland first. It'll happen first for Ireland, and there's no sign of that happening. Legitimately no sign of that happening. So,
well, were we not having a Carbery-Sexton debate? Was that not a serious thing, or are we saying that was all just kind of pointless arguments around the merits of Joey Carbery? Because I certainly felt that was a real debate
about who would actually start a big game.
It definitely felt that there was a conversation about how do we get Joey Carbery into the team.
Well, that's different. That's a completely different conversation.
I accept that, but
but that's he's not challenging him. That's the opposite of challenging him. That's like let's put him at full back, or can he play centre, or that's literally Sexton is unassailable in this argument, and so therefore how do you get him in the team?
That's the conversation you're having before the Rugby World Cup. I think that conversation shifts a little bit now. That's the conversation where Sexton is the reigning world player of the year. And that's to do with the fact that nobody is going to take his jersey. But what's happened now is there's been an intervening 6 months where the form for Ireland as a whole, all our top players really haven't exactly gone back to anywhere close to 2018 levels yet. And there have been conversations about who is usurping who. Now, of course, Carbery's been out, so we haven't been able to have that conversation around out half. But we've been having that conversation around pretty much every other position. My opinion would be that once Carbery comes back, and if he is back to the I guess, the beast that he was before his slew of injuries, that conversation would then become a reality head to head. But the thing is that
when, you know.
Yeah, we don't know when that'll be. But it's not necessarily kind of a black mark against Carberry that the conversation was had that how do you get them both into the team? That could have been a black mark against Rob Kearney as much as anything else.
Yeah, it was. It was. That's the whole point. My point is that Johnny Sexton's position in the Ireland team is unassailed and has been. And until somebody can kick him out of the Ireland team, there's no chance of him getting kicked out of the Leinster team. That's unassailable at this stage. And maybe Joey Carberry is the person to kick him out of the Ireland team, but he'll have to perform really well and he'll have to put a body of work together where there's a month or 2 months or 3 months where he's showing up. You know, the best ability is availability, and we just don't have that at the moment. So 15 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. I've got to tell you what's on the OTB Sports app. Always very busy. It's your choice what the featured stories are on the feed. You get to select which sports you're interested in, and that's your home feed. You can scroll down and then you see the latest podcasts that are available for you there. You can also just have a one-click radio button. The button at the bottom that says radio is OTB Sports Radio, and it's there 24 hours a day, uninterrupted stream of all of our content, including this show live, the evening show live, and all of our best stuff in between as well. Our podcast network is absolutely huge, 40 different podcasts updated at different intervals over the course of the month. All our videos are there. You can watch this show live, or you can look back at any of the stuff that we've done as well. And the best place to subscribe to our podcast is on the OTB Sports app. Loads of you are using it as your podcast player of choice at the moment, and we're getting really good feedback on that as well. So please download the app, rate it, share it, tell your mates, search OTB Sports on the App Store and you can have it right there. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We've got Nathan Murphy with us, we're going to talk deal or no deal, and up next we're going to hear from Kieran Donaghy about Tralee Warriors legend Jimmy Diggins, who is helping us to raise the profile of volunteers, and we'll tell you how you can help your own club's volunteers next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This week on Dadcast.
Will we give the audience
wherever we wanted.
Nathan brought his
I didn't bring my mother-in-law. I'm not going to go over it again. I didn't say that. I said it does. Anybody who brings their parents or in-laws, it comes in quite handy.
Dadcast with Cadbury Freddo Treasures. Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app.
Into sports.
20 yards out. Ursha shoot. Dungeon. Oh, what a goal from Fabinho. Wow.
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch.
Plus exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your App Store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Right, you're very welcome back. Now, we're going to help launch the 2020 Federation of Irish Sport Volunteers and Sports Awards, supported by EBS. The awards will see EBS and the Federation of Irish Sport reward the work of volunteers from around the country who go above and beyond every day to ensure that sport takes place in Ireland. Volunteers in Sport in Ireland dedicate some 37.5 million hours of volunteering across the country, 13,000 plus sports clubs and associations every year. And EBS wants to recognise that dedication and that passion through this partnership with the Federation of Irish Sport. And there's going to be an awards ceremony this November. Check out volunteersinsport.ie. We'll tweet the link to that, and you can make nominations for, you can nominate a club, you can nominate an individual or a sports body, and they're open from the 30th of July all the way through to the middle of September. So September 25th is the closing date for those nominations. So you've got a little while, and to help tell you the type of thing that we're looking for, I'm delighted to say Kieran Donaghy joins us alongside Jimmy Diggins. Gents, you're both very welcome. And Kieran, we obviously know you very well, but Jimmy, this is our first time chatting to you properly. How are you?
Very good, very well, thank God.
Can you give us some details about how much of a nightmare Kieran Donaghy's child was running around the club causing trouble? Spill the beans, please, Jimmy.
Well, he was always very enthusiastic about to play any sport. And I caught up with him first when he was young, for about 16 years of age, playing basketball with a local club here in Tralee St. Brendan's. And I knew at that stage that he had massive talent, and it was only just to nurture it and to get the right people behind him and the right coaches, and he was going to take off and be a star like he is.
And are you responsible for the nickname Star?
No, that came from a local pub that we attend, the Greyhound Bar. Kieran can tell you that story, but he turned out to be a star anyway, so it was a good name for him. But he was very young when he got it. I remember he had that name when he was about 18 or 19, when he was treading the boards in the basketball courts.
Very good. Lucky enough. Kieran, all joking aside, the importance of volunteers is something that all sports have, and some sports are better at telling the story about their volunteers, but there would be no gymnastics, there would be no boxing, there would be no ballet, there would be no park runs. There would be nothing happening if people didn't actually give up of their time. And actually it's getting harder and harder for people to find time. So it's a good thing for us to tell the story that volunteers are a huge part of our society and our community, and they're helping to keep the wheels greased of our society.
Yeah, 100%. Look, they're so important, from the kids all the way up. But if you look at any of the top Irish sports stars that we ever had, it would have started with a volunteer that would have caught them. And you know, it's about engaging youngsters. It's about kind of trying to get them on the hook for the sport that you love, and then trying to put that, you know, towards the child and hope that they follow your lead almost. With, you know, and Jimmy says that I always showed great enthusiasm because I loved what I was doing. I loved football and basketball, and the coaches that I would have had from ages up. You know, I know Jimmy knows the great James Hobbart, who would have kind of created the first bit of basketball in Tralee, I suppose, with the likes of Jimmy. But James was with me when I was under 10s and under 12s, and you know, he just ignited a little fire inside me about the game, and his enthusiasm, and his you know, the support he'd give you, and the kind of, he'd make you feel good coming off the pitch. If you're only catching a ball, he used to throw a ball up into the air and you used to go out and catch it, and he'd be like, out of the clouds, Donaghy, boy, that's a massive catch. And I jog back into the line, kind of going, let's go, let's bring on the next jump that I can run out for. So I was mad to run out and try and catch the ball to impress him. So very basic stuff, but he lit that little spark inside me. And, you know, it's huge. And I had a person similar in basketball, Shawnee Burrows, who is an Irish international, who I used to be watching the Super League team training. I had interest in the game. Obviously, the fact that I was up there on a Friday night in the complex the night before they used to play, it was a more relaxed training session. The complex was a bigger. I was able to shoot around in the side baskets. But I was watching them, and Shawnee was obviously watching me, and I used to shoot with my elbow to the side, and Shawnee straightened in my elbow. Now, Jimmy will tell you he mightn't have done a good enough job straightening my elbow, because some of my three-pointers would be a bit wayward. But, you know, the way he described it, and the reasons why he described it, I had to get this hand in, was that the shot would be straight and that the action would be straight and I'd score more. And of course, when you do a massive adjustment like that in your shot, everything, you can't even hit the ring for the first day or two. But he told me, he said, you'll get frustrated with it, but he said, stick with it and I'll see you back here Friday night and you should be going a bit better. And true enough, the following Friday night I came back and I kind of had it figured out, and I was making more shots and I was more consistent. And again, just took a bit of time out of his day, but shooting became a huge part of my game as an Irish international underage. I was a very good three-point shooter. So, you know, little things like that, it all goes back to a volunteer. So they are crucial in every walk of life, even with all the charity stuff we saw over COVID. You know, was lots of people volunteering to raise money for people, to do stuff for people. And it shows the goodwill that we have in the Irish people. And this is a great way to recognise it. And, you know, I even said about nominating people, that if you nominate somebody in your club or in your or that has helped you in some way over the years, you know, when you nominate them to volunteer in sport.ie, also I would send them the letter that the reasons why you're nominating them, because there's a lot of people that might have coached the kid 20 years ago, and if they got a letter through the door going, listen, I nominate you for this, you were so good to me when I was under 8s or under 10s, you were brilliant and you still are a big member of the club. These great people that are in the club, that's as good as anything. They don't need any national award. If they get that off a player, that'll make their day. And during this time in COVID, if there is older people out there that have spent 30 and 40 years volunteering in clubs and societies around the country, a little letter to them could make a huge difference in the current situation we're in.
No, it's a great shout, actually. I hadn't even thought of that. You know, this isn't just to go to the website and to be processed by people and then looked at by the judges actually reaching out to say, you really helped me at that one point. You know, it's a little
that'd mean
so
so
much
much
kindness.
more.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
Jimmy, when did you get involved yourself? Like, was there a volunteer when you were a kid who got you into basketball?
Yes, there was. I was first to be taken up by James Hobart, I suppose, going back in the 60s. We had a football club, Kieran's football club, my own football club, Aston Stacks. And we used to play, there was a guy, Michal Hayes, who was a school teacher, and he got a group of us of 33 of us together to start playing GAA, hurling, football. And that time there was athletics as well in the GAA, and we did all the three. And then we used to stop in September, and he got a brainwave. He said, look, we must keep this group going to be successful. So James Hobart was the man that came in on board that time, and he coached basketball then for the winter months. And the group kept together, and that was a huge thing for that group to be successful. Growing up as kids, and then it's going in as adults. There were some fantastic players came out of that group. John O'Keefe, Ger Power, the late Timmy Sheehan, the late Jackie Power, number of fellas. There was 30 of us. And we kept that group together until we were about 18 or 19, until we left secondary school and the guys went to college. But James was the basketball guru in Kerry and basketball guru in Ireland at that time. He was also coach of the Irish senior men's international team. And I just got hooked in the game then myself. I played it and I loved it, and I used to follow it then in the American game and read the books and read the magazines, and that's the way I got hooked into it. And from there then I started coaching ladies teams, and especially Lee Strand ladies. We went into the National League and Super League in the 70s and 80s and were very successful. And then I went back in then coaching schools in Tralee, Balloonhook and Mount Hawk and Motherwell. And then I just loved it, and I've travelled all over Europe coaching Irish senior ladies teams, under 18s, 16s and 20s, gone to European Championships for about 10 years. And then the next step then was to go to America. Was my dream, and off we went over to Boston and went to colleges over there and got connections, and have gone back there for the last 6 years. Then Kieran came on board with the Warriors plan, and we got together and we met and asked me to get involved. So I got involved as team manager for the last 4 years, and has just been fantastic, great success.
And what I actually don't know what the role of a team manager in basketball is. How does it differ? What would your duties be?
It's multifaceted when it comes to Jimmy. Sure. He's not your normal team manager.
Go on, tell us.
I'd be coming from a kind of a coaching background, you see, so the team manager wouldn't stop as team manager. I'd have to get my say into the guys' ears when they come off the bench, as Kieran will tell you. If we need to sit down, I'd give him the towel, but at the same time, I'd be inside in his ear for the next move to get in, So there's lots of team managers are very, very important as well. It's a role that I love. I like doing it at this part of my career, I suppose. The young guys are coaching now, and it is very good. And they still listen to me. They still want a bit of advice. So it's all working out well for me anyway at the moment.
Like, Jimmy, where does Kieran rank in terms of the most competitive people that have ever played basketball in Tralee?
Oh, in Ireland. He's one of the best guys I've ever came across. I said it to him, and their tears came from my eyes after one game above in Dublin. We played to win the league there 2 years ago. And what he does, what he gives to the team, what he gives to the sport, what he gives to the youth, what he gives to the whole community. It's a pleasure to be a volunteer then, you see that development from a guy that I knew when he was 16, and he came through the whole system. Now he has been all over the world as well. He has been everywhere with football and with basketball, but he still puts so much back into it now, and this is what I like about him. He just gives himself 200%. Everything he puts his mind down to do, and this is the pleasure volunteers get there when they see it continuing. It just doesn't die. If we stop, the sports, as you said yourself, won't continue. With athletics, with swimming, gymnastics, hurling, football, rugby, soccer, we need volunteers, and this is the pleasure you get out of it then after being a volunteer, and see what you produce and what happens.
I think that's a key point here in all this, Kieran, that it's getting harder and harder for people to find the time. And look, what's coming down the tracks is probably not going to be the easiest time for Ireland and for the world in terms of the economy. And again, like, people get so much joy from volunteering as well. That's the other side, that actually it can be a very enjoyable thing to root you back into a community and to make you feel a part of something bigger.
Yeah, look, I suppose we all started in kind of under 6s, under 5s in the local GA club. I was down there with my 2 daughters on Sunday morning in the Stacks. And there was bits of games going on against Nagale, a local club here in the town as well that Jack Barry plays for. And Jesus, the amount of numbers of parents on the sideline and people helping out the kids. And it was 2.5 pitches just full of kids running around playing. And, you know, like, this epidemic is hard, and we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety about the whole thing and what's going to happen next and how many cases are going to be tomorrow and will it go up and will it go down and will schools open and will this open and will we be able to travel to work. There's so much going on. But you know what? I was down there for an hour and I didn't think of anything else for that hour, only kind of going around talking to the kids and kind of showing them how to do a hand pass and, you know, trying not to be with my daughter's group because, you know, in fairness, they needed serious minding, considering my 2-year-old Indy was landed into the middle of them as well. So, but I was around watching a few of the games and having little chats with a few of the youngsters, and just the amount of parents, like, you know, when we were young, I don't know, there was definitely not that many parents around the side of the pitch. Because of course, everybody's dropped now, everybody's waited on, everybody's collected. So there is parents there, and if you're going to be there every week and you have any bit of interest in the football, sure, isn't it a great hour to give up of your time? And they are, and in fairness, the volunteers at that level of underage football in the club is massive. And even Jimmy, going back to our side of it with the Warriors, like, the people we have in the committee there, we've Ger Collins, she's a secretary, the amount of paperwork she used to do, the amount of stuff that she makes for the fans, she goes away and she makes these things that the 12 players give out on game night. It could be an autograph book, but you can see the detail that she goes into to make it, like, hours upon hours upon hours upon hours to give a kid in the crowd an autograph book that they can then go sign afterwards. You know, we've Terry O'Brien, who's a counsellor, you know, and he does so much for us as a chairman, bringing myself and Jimmy and all that gang together when we were trying to get this thing off the ground. And there's 12 or 13 in our committee, and that's every committee of every team and every sport all over Ireland. And committees aren't easy to be on because you have to be political and you have to see both sides of it. You have to try and get your point of view across. But again, whether it's volunteering at that level to bring financial stability to a club, or whether it's volunteering to coach a 6-year-old how to hand pass the ball, whatever role you're doing, if you can do it with that kind of enthusiasm and if you can enjoy doing it, and it doesn't, like, of course, there's nights I go to committee meetings where I'm training the other 3 nights and I'm working the other night away and I don't really want to go, but, you know, I see myself as I have to go if it's an important time of the season or whatever, or if there's points I need to try and get across the meeting. So it's that level of stuff that if we can get people, no matter what role they have in a club, and that's why club is so important, because not everybody's going to be the next Mikey Sheehy or Maurice Fitzgerald or David Clifford or the Gooch or whatever. You're going to have a guy who's going to be a great secretary for the club down the line. You're going to have a guy who's going to be a great chairman possibly down the line that's playing on the junior B team as of now. So it's the volunteer aspect is obviously huge, and we can't understate it. But I think what Jimmy does for the Warriors is a bit of everything. He's on the committee. He's a team manager. He's also a Hall of Fame coach in Basketball Ireland circles, nominated there last year. And he's a gas man with a few Bacardis and Coke and a night out too, I can assure you.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, if Kieran's having an out rant on the sideline in the middle of a Tralee game, what do you do to stop him?
Well, you just let him blow it out, you know. He's a good man to kind of get himself focused back in again. And yeah, they're a very easy bunch to deal with, you know. Like, players want to play the game, and it's just our job is to kind of manage them, you know, and get them to focus together and to play together and to work for each other. And that's one thing about the basketball. You see, they come off the court, they have a timeout, they have a substitution. You can talk to them, you can advise them, they can talk to you. How is my game? What am I doing? All that, you know. So that's the intriguing part of coaching basketball, where other sports maybe they mightn't have that, but we have that connection with the players, the assistant coaches, the team managers, the head coach. So it works very well.
And we're getting a bit of that now in the football as well, Jimmy, with the breaks, the water breaks. They're like 2 little timeouts. You get a timeout and a half. So it's interesting. It's interesting what way that will be exploited come the championship, hopefully.
The lads with the basketball background are going to have a bit of an advantage when it comes to that. One last point, Jimmy, that Kieran made there about you don't know who's going to be a great club secretary or a great chairperson. I'm very interested in this idea because I think it strikes at the heart of the whole we need to teach kids to win and lose from the age of 8. If they're not good losers by the time they're 8, they're no good to us. And if they're not intent on winning every single match that they've ever played, then they've got no business playing sports. I kind of think that clubs who look at people as a whole and say, we're here to get you involved in this sport for the rest of your life, and the best are going to rise to the top anyway, and people are naturally competitive. I don't know what you think about that, because I actually just think that so many good administrators in loads of sports and loads of clubs around the world, in Ireland in particular, where there is a win-at-all-cost mentality, that we don't need that. Actually, we just need people to go out and enjoy themselves in their pastime.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That was the old-fashioned way. That is changing now. Everybody is inclusive now. You must encourage everybody to come to the training sessions, get involved in the training sessions. As you said, the cream will come to the top in every sport. But what you need the volunteers. You need to encourage these people to be a secretary, a treasurer, a chairman, manager, coaches, work in the hall. There's a role for everyone. That's what I tell them. There's a role for everyone. You can get enjoyment from it. There's people involved with the Warriors. We have about 30, and they're all getting enjoyment from it. And they all have a different role. The players are on the court, but these are the backup. And it's fantastic when you see people coming and giving a hand, giving a helping hand. But thank God that philosophy that you were talking about there, win at all costs, is going away from sport. Coaches are being told to behave properly in the sideline. Parents are being told, correct, talk to the children properly and don't be shouting and roaring. That was the old-fashioned way. So I think we will get more, as Kieran says. The parents are coming to the sessions now. They have to stay around there. So it's a good time to tap into them and try and get a role for them, find a role for them within the club or within the structures.
I think you're dead right. Jimmy, great stuff. Kieran, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us, lads.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
If you want to nominate a hero from your club, just visit volunteersinsport.ie. Nominations can be made by a club, by an individual or a sporting body, and they're open. They're open now all the way through until the 25th of September. And this is the EBS and the Federation of Irish Sports rewarding the work of volunteers from around the country who go above and beyond every day to ensure that sport takes place. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the number here. Keith Woods is here talking about Ian Madigan on Monday Night Rugby. Have a look.
Billy Burns versus Madigan. Who's going to be Ulster's number 10, do you suspect?
I think that's a very interesting one. It's funny, when a guy hasn't got the run of playing, I often want them to be quieter, not louder, you know. It becomes very hard because Rory and his ilk are forever trying to put them under pressure to get information out of them. And you know, that's part of it. He is a guy that needs to actually do his talking on the field. But I was very fortunate, I think, when I started playing over in England a long time ago, to play with some older guys that had played some internationals, and the international game had nearly passed them by. But they were wonderful players and very, very well able to mature and play better and better as they got older. The drive for Ian has to just to play and enjoy it. I mean, I think it would be fair to say he seems to have been under a huge amount of pressure for about 5 years because he was a talent, because he had got the start and it didn't kind of go for him. He was sitting behind some really good players for a period of time. But if he goes and plays and enjoys it and becomes steady, good defensively, cracking goal kicker, able to play and not have any worries about him, I think he'll start moving up the pecking order. I think that's what he needs to do. But he needs to be able to, I think he needs to not play with the pressure of playing for Ireland. That's not to say he shouldn't play for Ireland, but he needs to just go and be Ian Madigan, the out half for Ulster. He has to do that first and foremost. He needs to make certain that he's in a white jersey long before he gets into a green jersey. So the chat about playing for Ireland is, for me, a little bit premature. Burns, I think, is good and capable. But I think if Madigan was able to concentrate on his old cliche game at a time, I still think that there's an opportunity for him in a green jersey, but he needs to be playing day in, day out with Ulster and just doing a good job all the time. Because if he gets that maturity at 31, he could have 3 or 4 years comfortably. And if that is the case, we can always do with another 10 in Ireland, and there's nobody to say no to him if he is knocking it out of the park every week.
Yeah, I think Keith was exactly right there. Now, a reminder, UEFA Champions League nights in are back. And to celebrate, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to run a special remote roadshow live on the 20th of August with guests including Chris Sutton, Jason McAteer, Stilian Petrov, David Myler and Neil Lennon. Tickets are free, but they're heading fast. So head over to the OTB Sports app, click on the events button to get yours. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back. Get ready. As you may have noticed, there's a Celtic FC theme to this roadshow. We've got some exciting news for you Celtic fans out there. You can win a place on a private Zoom chat with the current Celtic manager, Neil Lennon, just before Thursday's roadshow. This is exclusive access, no recordings, off the record, to be with a chance to win this prize. Answer this question. Tony Watt scored the winning goal against Barcelona in 2012, but who scored the opening goal that night? WhatsApp OTB with your name and answer and send that message to 087 9180 180. That's 087 9180 180. And you can enter that. Now, time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
The former King of Mayo, Nathan Murphy, joins us. Nathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We have a Deal or No Deal post-Barcelona car crash special for you.
Wonderful.
Starting with Ronald Koeman, right? Was he misunderstood during his time in England, and is he actually the right man for the Barcelona job?
Maybe they're not really the same question in that, how was he misunderstood? In that people just think of his last few months at Everton as the sort of catastrophe that they were, and forget about the previous 3 seasons when he brought Southampton to a record finish, 7th and 6th. And when he took over at Southampton, they had that summer just lost Maurizio Pochettino. They had lost Lovren, Lallana, Lambert. Luke Shaw went to Manchester United. Callum Chambers went to Arsenal. And still he came in and managed to make them better. For those couple of seasons, Southampton were absolutely brilliant to watch. And everybody raves about the job Maurizio Pochettino did. Ronald Koeman brought them to a whole other level. His first season at Everton was good. It was solid. It was 7th, which Everton would take right now. But then, obviously, they sold Romelu Lukaku. They never signed a striker. They went on this mad, ridiculous spending spree under Steve Walsh of bringing back Wayne Rooney on huge money, signing Davy Klaassen and Morgan Schneiderlin and all these number 10s, but nobody to actually put the ball in the back of the net. So, yeah, it finished badly, but he showed, certainly at that stage, and earlier in his career when he was winning titles with Ajax and with PSV, that he's a very good manager. But this Barcelona job right now is just a whole other ballgame. Like, what are they looking for in a manager? Is it somebody who goes in there and that when he walks in this week and he sits down with Lionel Messi, that Lionel Messi respects the Barcelona legend that is Ronald Koeman? Or is Lionel Messi going, well, actually, your last club job was Everton. I want the best manager in the world here. We should be going after the best. Who is the best available free manager in the world right now? We should be going after him. We should be going to Maurizio Pochettino saying, I don't care what happened with Espanyol. I don't care about your history. We want you here right now.
Is he the best available free manager in the world?
Pochettino?
Yeah. I mean,
he'll be right in the mix.
Does Messi care about the difference between Spurs and Everton?
I think Maurizio Pochettino got to a Champions League final just over 12 months ago, at the very least.
Yeah. Did they lose 13 games, or what was the stat that they lost, that the Spurs team lost?
Yeah, but they still got to a Champions League final.
Yeah, I mean, look,
he still brought Tottenham to a higher level than they've ever been at in recent decades.
Fair enough.
So I think his stock is still high. But again, that's what I'm saying. Who knows what they're looking for in this Barcelona job? Is it somebody who can manage above them and can somehow get the board together and making the right decisions?
They're looking for somebody who'll be easy to sack next year, or somebody who will be a nice stopgap for a while until Xavi's available next year.
Can I just, exactly, this is, I think it's career suicide to take this job now when you actually have a reasonable chance of winning the Euros. Like, unless he thinks the Euros isn't going to happen next year. But surely the Dutch side and the Dutch job is a better job than the Barcelona job, where there's going to be a new president in who has already said he wants Xavi in. So unless you're doing it because you know that you're going to work for 1 year and get paid for 2, I can see the benefits of that. And then maybe you've got some deal worked out with the Dutch that they put an under-21 coach in and you come back and take them for, I don't know. Like,
Is Arsene Wenger not throwing his name into
well,
the ring?
let me get into my next bit here.
Dutch job for the next year?
Arsene Wenger is reported to have approached the Dutch FA to offer his services if Koeman is on the way out. That's according to the Mirror today. What do we make of this tactic, my script asks, of touting yourself for a not yet vacant role with a major organisation? Should we applaud his proactive approach to the situation? I would like to make myself available to, host the Oscars this year. I'm not sure if there's going to be one. But just so you know, Mr. Academy Award person who decides, I'm available.
Well, it's a not vacant role by one day when he made it known. It does feel a bit sad and pathetic, though, that Arsene Wenger at this stage of his life needs to be touting himself around like that. Maybe it wasn't exactly that way. Maybe his agent who's been sitting at home for the last 2 years, 3 years, not making any money, is saying, you need to get it back out there and start working, so I'm going to put your name into the mix for that nice, easy gig where you only have a couple of games every month. And, as you say, you've got a chance to enhance your reputation because the Dutch will probably go in as, second favourites for the Euros behind France. I think Ronald Koeman looks at this with his history with Barcelona as a bigger job. He's obviously not going to go into this thinking it's a 1 year gig. All right, maybe he's a bit naive not thinking that. He also may have had conversations of, actually, yeah, Messi's thrown his toys out of the pram here, but there's no way in hell he's leaving. There's no way in hell he's leaving. And there are some quality young players coming through. We're going to sell a couple of players. We might get rid of Griezmann. We might get rid of Suarez. There might be some money to bring a couple of other players in. And this is your chance to go and bring Barcelona back. You, the Barcelona legend, the man who provided that legendary moment at Wembley. Maybe you're the guy who can bring us back to where we want to be in Europe. And the thought of that is just too much. And also, I think you're right. There's probably a part of him that's thinking, like, are the Euros going to take place next year? Are the internationals in the next couple of months going to take place? So is he going to be sitting around doing nothing at a time when he's getting this once-in-a-lifetime offer to manage Barcelona? So you can understand why they've gone from, and again, I think people look at, and I was at Goodison Park the day they were beaten 5-2 by Arsenal in his last game, and it was an absolute shambles. But I also saw a lot of that Southampton team, and like, the one thing I do remember was a match against Liverpool where he dropped Sadio Mane because Mane turned up 2 minutes late, I think it was, for the bus to the game. So for this huge match, so there's obviously a bit of a disciplinarian in there as well.
But that doesn't make any sense. You can't drop Sadio Mane for the game against Liverpool. That's stupid. That's the idiotic form of disciplinarianism from the 1960s. That was absolutely meaningless.
Look, the question is, was that Southampton team a brilliant team because they had Virgil van Dijk, Sadio Mane, Toby Alderweireld for a season, Victor Wanyama, Shane Long had his best ever Premier League season. Did all that just come together by luck, or was it because Ronald Koeman was the right man to get the very best and to bring Virgil van Dijk to another level, to bring Sadio Mane to another level?
Maybe Virgil van Dijk thought he was an absolute legend because, he would have grown up watching the 88 team. Last question on this. Will Messi actually leave Barcelona? I want a ranking out of 10, 10 being yes, he's gone.
3.
So you think he's staying?
I think he's staying. God, I hope he's staying. I'd love to see him at Manchester City, just out of pure selfish, going to watch Messi sometime possibly in 2021 if flights ever resume. Just for purely selfish.
You can fly, you just have to stay there for a fortnight and then stay here for a fortnight and not talk to
the thoughts of Messi going to Paris Saint-Germain to end his career. He was still, what did he score, over 30 goals last season? Like, he still got it. Again, one unbelievably bad capitulation for Barcelona that had been coming. And Messi was poor. But like, wherever he goes, I'm reading some articles today that, could he make Manchester City better? Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if Leo Messi strolling around is what that team needs to get them over the line in a Champions League quarter-final. I mean, obviously, last season they were one of the best teams in world football. They were an absolute machine. This year, the wheels came off a little bit, but their problem is defensive, not attacking. They've got enough attackers. I mean, maybe they
have a lot of attackers, but he never. And look, you can throw back any amount of statistics in terms of how many goals they have scored. But Gabriel Jesus is never going to be Sergio Aguero. He never could fully decide on who the player on the right-hand side was. So Sterling on the left, wasn't Riyad Mahrez, gave him a run of games, in and out of the side. Bernardo Silva played there at times. He played Kevin De Bruyne there, Phil Foden. So I think there's a spot there for Lionel Messi if he wants it, on the right of that front three for Manchester City.
There absolutely is. And he could play with Mbappe and Neymar, and it would just be how it was with Suarez and Neymar, and everybody would be like, well, that's pretty good too. So there's loads of places he could end up. 3 out of 10, says Nathan. No, he's not going anywhere. Now, let's move on to the other half of the greatest duo in football history. Cristiano Ronaldo, 35, no longer considered to be non-transferable by Juventus. He could be sold for as little as 54 million, with Paris Saint-Germain leading the race to sign him. How legitimate on a scale of 1 to 10 is the prospect of Ronaldo moving, and which Premier League club should throw their hat into the ring to sign him? Aston Villa is the correct answer. Go for it.
This feels like it's an 8 out of 10 heading towards a 9 out of 10. 55 million, what sort of wage is he going to be on? Probably 300-400 grand a week, at least, with everything else all thrown in. Yeah, Paris Saint-Germain, he could be on any amount of money. But in terms of what a club would get back for jersey sales and merchandise, and Ronaldo being arguably the most famous sports person in the world right now, from a financial point of view, it makes total sense. And from Paris Saint-Germain's point of view, from a goal-scoring point of view, again, 31 goals in Serie A this season. He's going to score at least that in Ligue 1 next season if he goes there. And they have a spot, as you say, if either side of Neymar and Mbappe. All right, Icardi, he's a lesser version of the now Ronaldo, who doesn't maybe contribute a huge amount outside the area except his goals. That's very much Icardi's, but like Ronaldo's a massive step up. So like, if Juventus want rid, if they want to make some space financially, you would imagine Paris Saint-Germain is the place to go. You win an easy league title yet again, and you're contenders for the Champions League. Of course, it's a slightly different scenario if you're going to Paris Saint-Germain and they've just won the Champions League. Suddenly there's a bit of expectation.
Is it not a situation where people go to Paris Saint-Germain now and it'll just be kind of like a disgraceful way to pad their statistics late in their career? It's like being Pele, but just for a couple of years, like the way his statistics are obviously way overblown because, what is it, all the goals came for Santos. Like, this is what the Paris Saint-Germain element of everybody's career is going to be. Just this sort of asterisk that it's like, yeah, you scored 500 career goals, but 50 of those, 100 of those came in a terrible, terrible league.
Why? Because it's a farmers' league. Except the team that finished 7th is in the Champions League semi-final.
Knockout football, anybody can reach the, that's why.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's move on. Quick fire. Sticking with the Galacticos, the Daily Mail reports that as part of the post-Bayern meltdown shake-up at Barcelona, we'll see 55 million offer plus bring Griezmann. Sorry. Hang on. Okay. This is the Daily Mail, starting again. Griezmann plus 55 million is what we're offering you for Neymar. How does that sound? If you're Barcelona, if you're Paris Saint-Germain.
If you're Barcelona, you sound like that's quite a deal you're getting there. If you're Paris Saint-Germain, you're thinking Neymar's, even in current market, worth what? Minimum 150, 200?
222 is what they paid, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, therefore, has he declined as a footballer over the last couple of years? What we saw the last night, not really. Griezmann is what, 4 years older than him? So you're suddenly trying to value Griezmann at 100, 150 million? I don't think so. So this is, for Paris Saint-Germain, this is not a good deal.
But he's French. You're paying a Paris tax.
It brings Griezmann back home. And
no chance. Paris Saint-Germain have finally got some return on this. They seem to have got some kind of relationship with him where there's a bit of tough love going on, and he's just entering his peak, and he's now about to become the only Galactico who's like at their absolute peak alongside Kylian Mbappe. So if you're Paris Saint-Germain, you do absolutely everything you can in your power to keep him right now. Isn't that the case?
100%.
Right.
Like, if you want to be that team of, like, they're not a feeder club. I'm sure they don't want to be a feeder club, even with all the speculation around Mbappe that, we bring players in for a couple of years and then we gift them back to Barcelona and Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Like, that ain't the project.
But also the money thing has changed. The game done changed, and I don't know if Madrid and Barcelona are going to be splashing the cash at the same Galactico level that they have been in recent years post-pandemic.
I don't know if you've looked at the price of oil either, Ger.
Not doing so good, is it?
No.
TalkSport say Luis Suarez could return to Ajax. We also previously brought reports that he's being linked with an MLS move as well. Is the 33-year-old, and specifically his reduced mobility, an underrated factor in Barcelona's demise? Should he still be at the Camp Nou next season?
You'd imagine he's one of the first that might be on the way out. But you can't really get rid of Suarez. Can you get rid of Suarez and Griezmann? Yeah, it is disappointing. It's one of the most disappointing factors of watching Barcelona. I know he scored the last night. Is the decline of Luis Suarez over the last sort of 6-12 months from the player that was there the first few years and also the player in the last couple of seasons at Liverpool, who was probably the third best player in the world for a couple of years. Everything about him is just off. Like, not scoring as many goals, not making as much an impact, still rolling around, but without contributing in other ways. The sort of fight, the sort of drive that he would have brought to a team, and even if Messi wasn't providing that he would provide it, like, that wasn't there the last night. So, Ajax would be a nice end, complete the circle, go back again, win a title, probably score a lot of goals. Are Ajax going to pay him as much as an MLS team?
Probably not, and the weather's nowhere near as good, and also, you could live in Miami and live in a Spanish-speaking culture and have an amazing time, great food, brilliant weather, and be an absolute superstar for 4 seasons. Which of these two things are you going to do? Should Barcelona sign Inter's Lautaro Martinez scored twice last night. He's the sort of player you'd imagine they'll be in the mix for. But again, Inter look to be building something. However, if Antonio Conte goes, do all the players look around and think, well, is this going to last? They've got a lot of quality young players. They've got a lot of players that, if they want to cash in. I know Milan Skriniar is not playing at the moment, but centre-back constantly linked with clubs in the Premier League that they could get 40-50 million for. And Lautaro Martinez, again, is a 40-50 million player. Like, they should sign these players, but what are they going to do when they get there? How are they going to be treated? Like, everyone thought they should sign Ousmane Dembele. He's done little or nothing since he arrived. I know he's had injury problems, but it just feels that the weight of the club. Yeah. The weight of the club is too much. Well, the weight of
pretty
Messi
much everybody
is too much
right now.
Yeah, the weight of Messi is too much. Right, very quickly. Will Thiago come to Anfield? 27.2 million is apparently the price, and Liverpool are not willing to pay it. Is that a fair price? What will Thiago bring to Klopp's side? What's going to happen here? Give me an out of 10 chances of him playing for Liverpool next season.
9, I would say. Yeah,
okay.
I understand, and Liverpool don't want to spend a huge amount of money, but 27.5 million is not a huge amount of money. And this thing of you can wait till January and get him for free next summer, you can't wait a year. You get him now. You look at the quality he showed the last night. Fabinho can go in. Suddenly you can release Fabinho to play at centre back if needs be as the 4th choice centre back. Yeah, and he's just pure quality. He adds to that group.
Straight away.
You get the deal done.
And that midfield trio is going to end up playing 60 games next year, so you need 4 into 3 all of a sudden, or 5 into 3 suddenly makes it an acceptable number of minutes of high-intensity matches for this. Let's play this video for you. McGrain says, I'd love to see Roy Keane as Manchester United assistant manager. He would demand high standards that are not there currently. Complete lack of leaders throughout the team. Lukaku wouldn't start in the League of Ireland at the moment. I'd say Lukaku could get a game in the League of Ireland. Probably would.
Just about.
Athlone would be able to use him.
Lukaku is one of the best strikers in the Premier League. He's one of the best strikers in the world.
He's not. He is not one of the best strikers. He's absolutely not one of them. No way. He is. Vastly overrated.
He is.
Flat track bully.
He is vastly underperforming.
And
he is not anywhere near his level at the moment.
Well, he's definitely not one of the best strikers in the world.
He would make the top 10.
You're going to die on that hill, are you? Lukaku's in the top 10 strikers in the world.
Give me 10 better number 9s.
I don't know if he's top 10 strikers in the Premier League. Owen?
A broken clock is right twice today, and this clock is a broken grandfather clock, and it is chiming hard this morning. 2018, middle of the Jose Mourinho downturn at Manchester United. People giving me stick for saying Lukaku is vastly underperforming rather than just being a terrible, terrible striker, which everybody seemed to tar him as. 33 goals this season, his best ever year. He has returned to form. He has assumed his position that I knew all along was coming, that he is truly one of the best sharpshooters in world football.
Scoring the 4th and 5th in a 4 and 5-0 win, that's absolute. When the money is being earned, that's where Romelu Lukaku is. Flat track bully.
Where did he score the rest of his 31 goals this season? In what positions were they scored?
3rd and 4th. Look, I just think... I actually do think Lukaku's a little bit overrated, to be honest, still.
It depends what you want from him. What do you want from him? Like, if you're looking for an all-round contributor, maybe he's not going to provide that. But if you're just looking for someone to put the ball in the back of the net, when you create a lot of chances, as Inter Milan do, there's very few better.
Should he be at Old Trafford?
You'd love to see him how he would have done in this current Manchester United attacking setup with a Bruno Fernandes, Paul Pogba returning to a bit of form, exciting wingers, creating a huge amount of chances that they're not actually taking enough of, then you may well have seen the Lukaku that scored 25 goals in a Premier League season. But like last season, he was, some games he's been asked to hold the ball up, which he was really struggling to do. He was playing 30, 40 yards from goal. They weren't getting the ball into the area quick enough. So, possibly.
Like the whole narrative around Lukaku was clearly ludicrous. Like there was Manchester United fans saying that this guy doesn't even have a first touch. As if Manchester United had gone out and spent money on a guy that doesn't have a first touch. As if a footballer can make it in the world at any level of professional football without having a first touch. There was this ludicrous hyperbole around Lukaku as if he was this terrible lump of a man up front who had no talent whatsoever, which just clearly was not the case. He was vastly underperforming, and it was plain for everybody to see that Jose Mourinho had sucked the talent out of this guy to such an extent where he had lost all of his confidence. He was in pretty not great shape, actually. In fairness, that could be down to Lukaku himself. But there were a multitude of reasons here that weren't just down to his talent. And I just felt that everybody was like straight away saying, this guy is not good. This guy's just a terrible footballer. And as I say, I think a lot of people who said that would have got that badly wrong on him. Could he still play for Manchester United? I think, yes, he probably could. He definitely couldn't play for Liverpool or Manchester City. So, like, the system is
top 10 strikers in the world, though, Owen?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
100% top
what
10
is a striker? Look at Fantasy Premier League this year, where Aubameyang and Mane and Salah are all down as midfielders for some bizarre reason. So unless you're because they go and they contribute a little bit more in different positions, they're not that straight up number 9. I think as a straight up number 9, there's no question Romelu Lukaku's in the top 10 of them in the world. If you look at Paris Saint-Germain tonight, we'll start with Mauro Icardi in that position. And Icardi's a brilliant goal scorer. Lukaku is a step above him.
OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Manchester United are being linked with the move for Juventus' 29-year-old winger Douglas Costa. Nathan, is Jadon Sancho going to... this is old bait and switch. Is Jadon Sancho going to join Manchester United? And who should they sign if Sancho is actually staying at Dortmund?
Well, I saw those quotes again this morning from Borussia Dortmund, sort of like, look, this is a circus in England. This is the way they go on, but we're quite calm in the situation here. He's going to stay. So move on. They clearly feel that they need another option amongst that front four. So they'll obviously go after somebody, I presume, but they need a centre half. And I also think they need at least one central midfielder. I'm not convinced Matic, while he had a good end to the season, is the answer alongside Pogba and Fernandes. Didn't need a left back, probably. So they've 3 or 4 positions they need to strengthen before adding an extra attacking option. But if they're going to sell Lingard, Odion Gallo isn't really going to get a huge amount of game time you'd expect next season. But, like Liverpool and all the rest of them, they're going to play twice a week, every week. So he'll get minutes off the bench. So maybe Jack Grealish has gone very quiet, obviously. Maybe as this rolls on, you start thinking again, Jack Grealish does provide that option if he can play in 3 or 4 different positions.
Yeah.
So, I think if you're looking at the way United set up, and I know you want to talk about Gallo and his role, the backup for Anthony Martial is probably Marcus Rashford. So Rashford moves into the centre if Martial isn't there. So who then replaces Rashford out on the left-hand side? And maybe that's where Jack Grealish steps in.
Yeah, and suddenly he actually ends up playing 40 games next season without a nailed-on starting role in the absolute massive games. Very quickly, Arsenal are expected to announce Aubameyang's massive new 3-year deal. The future of Lacazette remains unclear amid interest from clubs including Juventus, which might be a replacement for Cristiano. Do you agree with Owen's theory, Nathan, that Arsenal need to keep Lacazette by any means necessary?
Only because you wouldn't back Arsenal to be able to replace him. Who are the other options right now? Eddie Nketiah to play in that more central role? They're paying him a huge wage. They're probably going to get a substantial fee for him. And he doesn't play that often. Big games, quite often, he's not on the pitch. So clearly Arteta doesn't fully trust him or doesn't really fancy him. So what is the point in keeping him there then, in that case? Do you just give Eddie Nketiah enough games so that he gets to the level you want him to get to? Otherwise, Lacazette is not in the top 10 of the best strikers in the world. Is the only reason you are desperate to keep him on because Arsenal don't have the financial muscle at the moment to go and actually buy somebody any better?
No, I actually think that he has been really, really good. Like, let's not forget that, like, he has played 30 times for Arsenal in the previous Premier League season. I know like half a dozen of them came off the bench, but it's not like he's totally been out in the cold. Like, he has fulfilled a role in Mikel Arteta's style of play. He isn't a goal scorer. He won't score you goals, but he will drop deep. He will help out in a midfield that is suffering at the moment, that is lacking the types of passers that you would expect of a top 4 team at the very least. This is the guy who will drop back, help you out with possession, help bring in your left and right forwards, who have been, Aubameyang as one of them for the season so far, a brilliant enabler for that sort of striker on the left of a front three. That number 9 is a very bespoke role whenever Lacazette is in that position. I don't think Nketiah can fulfil that whatsoever. This is a sort of a Lukaku situation, I think, where it's kind of another hill that I've identified and kind of want to die on here. But I genuinely think Lacazette would be a terrible loss to Arsenal. I think every game he's played, tactically, he has been vital to how Arsenal approach the game and attack.
OK, Shane Duffy to Celtic. Nathan, is it going to happen?
I think a lot maybe depends on what happens with Celtic in these Champions League qualifiers and how much money they have. And listen, Ger, I don't want to... Thursday night, Neil Lennon, live and exclusive. We'll let you know then.
A good move?
We'll just ask the man himself. If it's an option of Celtic, West Brom, West Ham, you'd like to see him probably go to West Ham, who are the most likely to stay in the Premier League next season. If Celtic are in the Champions League, yes, go play there, but I prefer to see him stay in the Premier League.
All right. Chelsea finally have been told that Kai Havertz, who's only 21, will cost £90 million sterling. That figure has apparently given them cold feet. Should they shut up and pay up, or are Leverkusen overplaying their hand in the current climate?
You would think they're overplaying their hand in that Chelsea have so many different options at the moment that are they desperately in need of them? But this speculation has gone on for so long, you got to assume that they are, and that Leverkusen are very much aware of how much money Chelsea have and are willing to spend this summer. So, yeah, these German clubs are obviously looking at the English clubs thinking, we see what your television rights deal is. And yeah, we know there's going to be a bit of a dip in revenue here, but we also look at your owners and think, yeah, we're not giving these guys on the cheap. We'll happily keep them for another season, let them improve again. He's 21, give him another year. And if you don't do it this year, Manchester United will do it next year, or Manchester City will do it next year. Yeah. So spend the money.
Or we'll keep them. And are they going to finish above 4th next year, finally? Frank Lampard's Chelsea?
Yes.
Where will they finish?
3rd. Massive improvement.
Deal or no deal on the books for today? Thanks, Nathan.
Cheers, lads.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Coming up on OTB Sports Radio today at 12 o'clock, it's Danny O'Reilly talking with Alan Quinlan on Quinny's How's the Head. OTB Gold is an interview with the author Barry Ryan, who's written a book called The Ascent about cycling. Dadcast live at 3 o'clock. Jason Sherlock is OTB Gold at 6, and then the show is live tonight from 7. The best place to listen to it these days is, of course, on the OTB Sports app. We're back tomorrow morning at 7:30. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast. The whole thing is timestamped for you to flick through as fast as you want to. We'll see you tomorrow. Best of luck.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.